Hey everyone, this is the Ladies Room podcast. I am your host, Ashley Michelle, and I am so excited about this show. We have a banging show today, and we have some very special and talented and insightful guests today. One of our guests is hopefully going to be on board with us permanently, Mr. Rashad. We have Darwin, a very faithful viewer who might be on board with us permanently as well. We have the usual Cannon Hill, Mrs. Understanding, and Mrs. Jovo. And we have
Yeah.
two additional special guests, Lakanya Manuel and very special TJ Randolph from Mosaic with TJ. Did I say that right? All right. So I actually want to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves, okay? So can we start with, I know Rashad, you were with us last week, but you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Rashad. I currently live in Maryland. Just moved here like 3 weeks ago, but originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. Pleasure on having me on the show, and I'm glad that extended the invite for me to be a permanent member because I love the discussions. I love speaking with you guys. So thank you again for having me.
All right. And Darwin?
Yes, I'm Darwin. Originally from Chicago, moved out here to Atlanta about 6 years ago with my beautiful wife. We have a lot of kids, kids that we didn't have, kids that we did have, and we just trying to figure out this marriage thing, this life thing, and I'm just happy to be on the show with a lot of insightful people. Mike.
We have Lakanya as well, Mrs. Lakanya or Miss Lakanya Manuel. You want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm LaConya. I'm a marriage and family therapist here in Charleston, South Carolina. But I'm from Augusta, so I still claim Georgia as my home. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, we have Mrs. Terry Tj Randolph. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. I am TJ Randolph, and I am in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've been here for about 8 years. I consider Oklahoma City my home. I've been doing this YouTube thing since May of this year, and I'm just here to try to help women and men, but primarily women, learn from the things I didn't do so well to help. So hope you don't have to wait until you're 52 to find the love of your life if that's what you want if you want to be married.
Okay, awesome. I am so excited about this show. All right. And here over at the ladies' room, we like to just jump right into it. Okay. So I'm going to ask the very first question. Okay. And that first question is, what are signs you need to heal before dating or courting someone? What are signs that you need to heal before dating or courting someone? Who like to jump right in? TJ, yes. Do you mind me
Uh,
calling you TJ? Okay,
oh no, I
TJ.
don't mind. You can call me
Okay,
TJ. You can call me Terry. All that's fine.
okay,
Because my name is Terry. Well, before I got married, it was Terry Jones, so it's
okay.
Terry Jones Randolph. So people just call me TJ Randolph. So yeah, I answer to all of the above. Um, interestingly enough, I have been married for 2 years. We've been together for 3, and before I met him, I had to go through some serious self discovery into the patterns of my relationship choices. And my therapist stated that I should take, I can't exactly remember, but I'm sure your clinicians will square me away. For however many years you've been in a relationship, you need to take almost like double that time off or something to that effect. So the relationship that was really bad for me, and interestingly enough, you're talking about domestic violence later. It ended. It was about 6 months, but it ended in physical abuse. So I had to take about a year and a half off to really drill down because I couldn't understand how I waited until I was 50 years old to find myself in a physically abusive relationship after I had, successfully avoided such things. So you have to do the self-examination, particularly if you have a series of failed relationships, not only what their part is, but particularly what your part was. And I think that that's what I had to do. So the signs that before you start courting is to do a self-assessment, in my opinion, as to what you are bringing to the relationship in a sense of the baggage, because we all have it. But you want to, try to carry on baggage is one thing, but steamer trunks is something different. So you want to kind of do a self-assessment and be honest with yourself before you can be honest with someone else. So I think take some time off for sure and kind of learn yourself, fall in love with yourself again, date yourself, get to know yourself, be comfortable by yourself with your own company first. And when you do that, then you can maybe welcome somebody else in. That's just my experience.
I love that. I definitely have some questions for you, but I want to hear from everyone first. So can you chime in for us? Cannon, what do you think?
I think that it kind of, okay, if the question is what are signs that you need to heal before dating or courting, then I think that would be if you are seeking out other people in order to complete something in yourself, right? Like if you're just constantly seeking validation from other people, or to be, fulfilled by somebody else in some kind of way, or something like that, then I think that that's a good sign that you probably need to do some healing and before you date. But I think a lot of times one of the purposes of dating can be like to kind of figure out things too, and like figure out what you like and don't like, and find out things about yourself and stuff like that as well. So I wouldn't say, like, oh, if you, unless you know exactly who you are, don't date or anything like that. I would just say that you need healing if you find yourself constantly seeking validation from other people. But as long as you're not really doing that, and, everything else, I feel like that's kind of lessons of blessings is what I call them, and it's just life. Like, how else would you kind of figure out and learn? You learn a lot of things about yourself from your relationships with other people a lot of times, and different things like that. So yeah, I just think you don't want to be toxic, and if you find some toxic shenanigans going on, and things like TJ said, like violence, or like, extreme things like that, then yeah, you need to take some time off. But outside of that, just figure it out, have at it.
Okay. So that is an interesting point, that you do learn from dating experiences. Okay. But I think most people would agree that there are some times when you just shouldn't be dating. Would you agree with that? Okay. Definitely if you're toxic. You mentioned that. All right. So I have some questions for you too, but I'm going to go on to someone else. Darwin, Mr. Darwin, what do you think?
Well, I think if you haven't had any bad trauma in your life, as far as like abuse, rape, a lot of deaths in your family, things of that magnitude, I think it's no waiting period. You should just go ahead and date as many people as possible. Get to know your people, get to know what you like, get to know what you don't like, get to know what type of personalities you can deal with. Because I think the more battle tested you are when you're looking for that ultimate mate, the better it is, right? You won't get into that relationship thinking that that's the one for you, when you'll see the red flags a lot sooner if you're dating a lot, right? And you'll find out what you like more and what you don't like more. So I don't think if you haven't been through a lot of trauma, there's no healing necessary, because I mean you steady growing and you steady learning yourself too, right? So signs of healing is just like you're just trying to prepare, like repair yourself for something. But I mean, that's how you get through the struggle, right? You got to get tested, and sometimes you can come out as survivor. Sometimes you can't, but at the end of the day, you're going to be a better person for whatever you went through, right? With any person you're dating, whether it was just for like 2 days or 2 months, you learned something about you or about people.
Okay, that's interesting. What do you think, Mrs. Jovo? What do you think?
Well, I think that the question is, what are signs you need to heal before dating and courting? And I think it's important to figure out if you've done everything you can to heal. I think sometimes we kind of jump into things too fast. Rather, um, we know that we're still hurting. We'll keep picking at scabs, picking at things, or going back. We go back into these old comfort zones. That's definitely a sign that you might need to do a little bit more work to heal than what you've been doing. Falling back into the same patterns of behavior, the same habits. I know I've had, different friends, different associates who, they'll jump right back into the dating game after they've gotten into a long-term relation, after they've gotten out of a long-term relationship. And they go back into their same patterns of behavior. And then they find a way to say, well, maybe it's the person that, I went out on this date with. Maybe it's him, maybe it's her, but it's kind of like, you're the common denominator. So it's something going on with you that you might need to address. Because a lot of times when you hear those words, what signs do you need to heal? Some people assume that you're healing from something that somebody else did to you. We do damage to ourselves too. You might be coming out of a relationship where you neglected your own needs and your own wants and your own desires, or you settled for, less than, you settled more than kind of go for what you want in that relationship. And you've done a lot of damage to yourself doing that. So, I think it's important to, recognize what you need to heal from, you know, and also, am I jumping back into things too fast? And am I the common denominator to the things that have hurt me? And if I am, how do I stop those patterns of behavior? So that's kind of, what I think about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jovo. I love that you added questions that we can ask ourselves if we're trying to decide if we really should be dating. Those questions. Am I the common denominator? That's a good question to ask. What do you think, Rashad? What do you think?
Yeah, all you guys have given really great answers, and it's kind of hard to add on to all the great answers that's been given. But I guess the only thing different I would have to add is, I guess, signs to show that you might need healing is really going into the dating pool, relationships, dates with other people, really just without the ability to have that openness and optimism to really like give it your all. So like basically if you're carrying things from previous relationships, previous experience, preconceived notions to where you can't be the best you or give the best you to that person. So you're holding something inside, expecting something negative with the interaction from this person you're dating. And so I would say with that, that shows a sign of needing to heal and kind of get through that, because really being like that, and that's something I think, a lot of people experience, whether it's with ourselves or with the partner that we've been with, carrying baggage from a previous relationship, emotional baggage, things like that. That can pretty much sabotage a relationship from the jump. Even if there's good intentions there, if you don't have that baggage settled and cleared, and you can't give it the best version of you, you probably can't get the most out of that relationship, and could be missing up on a great person for you. So I would say that's probably one of the most major things I can think of that hasn't already been said.
Thank you very much. And Raven or Mrs. Understanding, what do you think?
I think, like Rashad said, everybody gave great answers. I think it's super important not to look for validation in your partners or potential partners, not to future plan or love bomb one another. You meet somebody you connect with, the first thing you want to do is shower them with everything you got in you, and that's not the best thing either. So I think just knowing exactly what you need to heal from, like I think Ms. Jovo said, is important. And I think a sign, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think if you can't handle being celibate, then you need to heal, because sometimes people are just lonely and, looking for that physical connection, and they get in situationships and, it's a whole nother cycle again. So I think, if you can't handle staying at home and keeping it closed, then you might need to take some time, and get to know yourself for real. So
Okay. All right. Thank you.
She said situationships.
That's what they are. They're not really
I
together.
love it.
Nobody says boyfriend and girlfriend anymore, or
Mhm.
I don't know. I didn't even date
You
no
know,
long.
Ray, ain't no wrong with a situation.
Situationships get you through it sometimes.
Oh Lord. This is not the advice we want to give.
Right.
Sex
Also,
is
I'm kind of
recreation.
winging it. I've been married for like 8 years. I'm still, I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there. I don't necessarily, I don't know. I'm just,
Sometimes
trying
those
to help.
situationships I think
Throw
can
that
be
one out.
damaging though, right? Like I haven't had any situations.
Sometimes it could be damaging, and sometimes it could be good. You never know.
I think you got to look at sex as like a recreational sport. Like it's just something you
Lord.
do.
I don't think what the other guest spoke yet.
No, so I definitely I have some questions for you too, Raven. It sounds like everybody has some comments about that, but I do want everybody to get a chance to speak. So last but certainly not least, I want to hear from Mrs. LaKanya or Miss LaKanya. I keep calling you Mrs. I'm claiming it, girl. I'm claiming it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. When I heard the question, I see the question, I immediately thought about relationships and you having to relate to someone. And so this idea of if you are still in this mode of being selfish, and there's nothing wrong with being selfish, but you need to be able to identify, well, I'm not in the mindset to be in a relationship yet. And I think sometimes people get into relationships and they're not ready to not be selfish. And that can cause a problem. And so do you have the ability to not be selfish? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to be flexible right now? And also, are you available emotionally? Do you have the time? Do you have the mental space? Do you have the emotional capability right now to be in a relationship? I think those are things that you might want to look at before getting into the dating and courting stages.
Right. And if you don't have that concern for someone else or a desire to be concerned with someone else, then maybe that's a sign that you shouldn't be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some questions for pretty much all of you. I wanted to start with TJ. You mentioned that you should be asking some questions. Well, actually, it sounds like you guys had some strong responses to what Raven was talking about. So maybe I'll go back and revisit that first. So let's talk about this a minute. Situationships. I think TJ and I kind of have the same facial responses right now. But what do you all mean by that? What do you mean by these situationships?
I'm just going by what I see on Twitter and assuming it's, talking to a guy for 6-7 months. There's no title. Y'all still, but I mean, nobody knows anything about what's going on and you guys are still playing house. So they end up moving in together. Nobody still has a title. People have kids together. Nobody still has a title, so I don't know what you call it. Y'all ain't in a real relationship. It's a situationship.
Well, these kind of things, I mean, they're not new. I mean, I think this vernacular of situationships is cute. But that kind of thing has been, I mean, that's not new. And, I didn't get to be 54 without knowing what that is. I mean, come on. I mean, so, but the bottom line was it just didn't get me what I want. I mean, I think the problem is when men and women go into these situations and they don't have a clear communication or a clear understanding of what the end goal is. Because using myself as an example, there were many times I thought I was in love and I thought he loved me, but he never said it. He never said it, but in the meantime, I'm doing what grown married folks do, but he hadn't asked me to marry him. So, so that's part of the thing that, kind of led into the first question is that, knowing what I expected and being able to fully articulate that and being able to handle whatever the response was. Because sometimes, I'm just going to be honest, sometimes for me, I was kind of scared to say what I wanted for fear that I may not get it.
Mm.
So if you just kind of go along with it, and well, maybe he'll
Mhm.
come around to wanting what I want. But
Mhm.
sometimes they say don't ask the question if you don't want the answer. So I can say that yeah. So but situationships, I look at that because again, me and my husband, we I interviewed him and I asked him about if a man and a woman enter into this agreement or this situationship, can the man tell when the woman has changed her mind? Because sometimes women will go into it saying that we can handle certain things, knowing good and damn well we can't. we can't, or we talk ourselves into, oh yeah, I can handle just being friends with benefits or whatever. And then I asked my husband, I said, can a man tell when that woman has changed? He said, of course he can. He said, because women make it very clear, a woman is not going to give everything for something that's just a casual thing. So my point being is that it never ends well. It never ends well, in my opinion. Generally speaking, it doesn't end well for the woman. I mean, yeah, I'm just grateful that there was no social media when I was doing my stuff. I'm just saying. I'm
I like that part about it never ending well. I mean, I have never really had a situationship, but I see what other women have experienced, and it seems like it never ends well. A lot of times, people, specifically women, will talk about how, oh, that's just my, I don't know, my boo thing or my whatever, and they say that there are no feelings attached, but then when they talk to you, they're stressing about what he's doing, where he's at, why he ain't call me, he didn't give me nothing for my birthday. So I'm like, wait a minute, it sounds like you are emotionally attached. You're saying that you're not, but it certainly sounds like you are. So and I know some women feel like they can be in relationships like that where they are physical or sexual with somebody and there are no strings attached. But I think in most cases, women get more emotional and they get attached, especially when it's not just sex. We're not just talking about sex. We're talking about so-called situationships where you spending time with this person, you're probably sharing secrets and thoughts and goals and dreams and past hurts. You're opening up with this person, regardless of what it's called. It's a relationship, right? It's a relationship. It might not be the relationship you think it is. He probably sees it completely differently from you, but it's a relationship. And you're sharing your time, energy, your effort with somebody. So it doesn't even matter what it's called, right? I think that whoever you engage with will have some type of imprint on you.
I have a
Especially
question.
especially if you are physically or sexually involved with them. So I caution against situationships. I mean, what do I know? I haven't, I don't have a whole lot of, relationship experience, but just from what I've seen, it just does not seem to be a good thing for women. But Rashad, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so you kind of answered it too. You as well, TJ. Would you say most situationships are due to, I guess, the men not defining the relationship and kind of the woman hoping that the man defines the relationship, like, hey, we're together or we're not? That's kind of how these start.
in some instances, yeah. I mean, I know we're gonna get to it, but this whole the baby thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, let's come on now. At
Yeah.
some point,
Yeah.
she thought she was in a relationship, but
Yeah.
according to him, they wasn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah. I
This is
think
where I
where
feel like closed mouths don't get fed.
And
I'm
sometimes
not I'm
even
not
open
understanding
mouths
this
get
whole
fed boo
concept.
boo.
I'm gonna tell you, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, or we're not. And if we're not, don't call my phone because we're not. Don't it's how it is. But if we're boyfriend and girlfriend, that's what it's gonna be. I want to set boundaries. I don't understand this coy behavior. This is new to me.
But
Yes.
open mouths can get fed boo boo. Okay? And be told it's
And you
pudding.
don't take
Once
it.
you know you're eating boo boo, and then you can stop.
But here's
Thank you,
my
Rashad.
thing.
yeah, I think that we're conflating. The thing is, I think that we're conflating like different things, right? I think that society, for one thing, has a way of pressuring women, right, to be in relationships, demand relationships in order to have sex, whatever. I think that that's a a real pressure that exists. And I think that does a lot of time drive a certain behavior in women, that in order to justify to ourselves a lot of times for the desires that we have to solidify a relationship or whatever, so that because how was it always talked about? Like somehow our value is tied to our sexual experiences. So if that is the case, then you're going to be more, prone to be like, okay, this got to be a relationship because otherwise I'm not important. I'm not using me, or whatever it is that is treated like. But I mean, everybody is not the same. And there are some people who can have sexual experiences or whatever, and they're not just like, oh, well, I have to have this relationship or whatever. So I think that a lot of times what we do see, I do agree with TJ that a lot of times it does not end well. But I think that does come back to the fact that when we talk about healing in relationships and things like that, like, are you doing it because you're trying to pursue these things or thinking you're going to get something more out of the situation than what you are? A lot of times like that happens. Like women know up front going into it that that's what you want. So it's not like you being blindsided, like, I got these feelings out of nowhere that I never would have expected. Like, that's not what be happening. Like, let's just be honest, right? So it's like, no, there's times when you can have moments in time with people and that just be what it is. And you just move on with yourself and it's okay. And you never even think about it again. Like, that's possible. But a lot of times I do think that is used as as an avenue into, okay, so I'll start here. I'll just accept this right now, but eventually it's going to become this. It's not something that most of the time we get blindsided with out of the blue. And it's not just women who have that experience either. Men do it too. Men will quote unquote catch feelings or whatever you call it, or want more out of a relationship sometimes as well. But I just think we can't mix it up and make it a one thing and be like, if you're having this type of relationship, then that means it's going to lead to XYZ. It can, and it happens, but I don't think that it's just like, if you're doing this, it's gonna lead to this thing. So
well, I think that I think people have to be honest. You have to be honest about where you stand. And when I say honest, sometimes you do have to verbalize it. Because everybody doesn't think that way. Some people are very intentional when they're dating, and they don't want to just date anybody. They are dating because they want to get to know somebody, and hopefully it lead to something long-term or a marriage. And I know, of course, we can date somebody and it can look great in the beginning and it doesn't work out, of course. But some people are intentional with dating and they don't want to, waste time, waste energy, waste their effort. So I think it's important to be honest, and I think about the DaBaby and the Danny Lee situation where people were like, well, she should have known she was just a side chick. He didn't say that he was serious about her. But I learned something new today, because I thought, as grown people in our 30s, that we didn't need titles. I thought that was a thing of the past. I thought that was like way back when we were in 6th grade, where, the little boy wrote, "Can you be my girlfriend?" and put a yes box and a no box, and we had to check. Like, I didn't. Now, I know that, people don't always see relationships the same, but if I'm spending time with you, we're vacationing, I'm talking to you on the phone, we're meeting each other's families, I'm thinking I'm in a relationship, but it's obvious that, men are like, well, no, I didn't claim you. I didn't claim you as my woman. We might be spending time together. I might be spending holidays with you. I might introduce you to my family, but apparently, who told you you was my girl?
Exactly.
But
hey, make a dude commit, otherwise he ain't gonna do it.
So what I'm saying, that sounds very to me, that sounds misleading. That sounds very misleading. So I have to, ask you, I should give you that little paper with, am I your girlfriend, with the check yes box and check no? Is that what?
Yes, it's communication is key.
Yes.
Define it.
I wanted to chime in because my relationship with my husband started out where we both were not single. he was dating somebody, and I was dating. And so, and y'all heard me.
Miss Joe.
Look, y'all have heard me talk about it on this show before. That as old fashioned of the background that I came from, and LaKanya, me and LaKanya went to school together, and we Georgia girls, and you know what we're taught at a young age. We got to be ladies, but
Right.
I'm a firm believer that you can date, okay, and still be a lady. I mean, I remember getting to college, and I'm talking about fresh off the farm. Y'all heard me say it before on the show. Never had really a relationship or boyfriend, but my grandmother prepared me, and she was like, "You don't have to go with the first fish that bites. You can go to the movies with somebody. You can go to dinner with somebody. You can accompany somebody to a party and not put a label on it." See, I want to feel sorry for Danny Lee, but I don't, because she and like a lot of our young African American women, they think they know what
Not
dating
African
is.
American.
Well, a lot of our young women. Let me just say that they think they know what dating is, and they don't have any idea. Okay, I know grown women who are living with men. They got kids together. Well, when did y'all date? Like, when was the last time y'all went out, on a date? They don't know what that is. They know having sex, they know cohabitation, and then they know the kids, and then they know, oh, now we've added water and stir. Oh, now we living like married people. You have bypassed the courting experience. And so then when these guys don't court you because you never did say, I need to be courted. Okay. My husband committed to me because I told him straight up, if we gonna do this, you need to get rid of her because I'm about to get rid of him. Okay. Like, ain't gonna be no situations, no entanglements, and all these other colloquialisms that we like to use. All these different words. We're gonna exclusively date each other if we want a healthy relationship. And that's what we did. And the funny part is, he thought that I was not dating other people when I met him, that I was just so stuck on him. And a lot of my friends from college thought, oh, she just stuck on him. But little did they know, I had movie acquaintances. I had somebody who I would go to church with. I had somebody I would go to, a show or a play with. I just didn't put it all out there in the open, because courting is courting.
I'm guessing no social media, right?
No social media, no cell phones. Okay. And I've said that before. And LaKanya can kind of maybe co-sign on that. When we were in college, I think the best blessings were a few of us had cell phones at some point, and there was no social media. We were out here living our best life, and we were dating and courting like grown people.
But see, you all are saying, like, the guys are saying, like, they agree, y'all agree. Yeah, you got to communicate. But let the tables be turned, though. I was dating somebody not that long ago. Okay. Let me tell you my story. So I was dating him not that long, just a couple months, right? I communicated with him 2 different times that I wasn't sure where I wanted it to go. I wanted to be honest with him, right? He was courting me. He was spending money, investing time, and it seemed like he was very, very interested. He was very vocal about where he wanted us to go, right? So, and after sharing some things about his previous hurt, like how he was disappointed with the previous wife that he, the woman that he was with, I wanted to make
Uh-oh, we lost her.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, there we go.
I think you got frozen, Ashley.
I don't know what happened.
All right. Well, I'm sure she'll be back in a second. She'll be back in a second. The story was getting juicy.
I know, right?
I was on the edge of my seat. I'm like,
first
what?
wife.
Yeah.
But why are you so quiet right now on this topic, though, Darwin? I don't what's happening right now.
Oh, we lost
I'm just
LaKanya.
listening and taking it all in. I'm talking. Y'all want me to talk?
But y'all fellas, y'all felt me where I was coming from though, right?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
I like how you communicate that movie partner. Like I have a lot of movie dates. You very classy with it.
Hey, I'm just saying.
You got a whole 35.
I got 2 nieces in college right now, and I just had a conversation with my second oldest niece, who she just turned 20. And she introduced me to a male friend of hers, and I'm messaging her. I'm like, hey, what's up? She went to some fraternity party with her male friend, and I was like, haven't seen your male friend, your boyfriend. I use the term boyfriend. She said, Auntie, let me correct you. He's not my boyfriend. We're just friends. We casually date and spend time together. I'm not in a place where I want to entertain a serious relationship. And this is what I did. Because she knows she has set her lines and her boundaries. Danny Lee didn't set no lines and boundaries for the baby. Danny Lee saw what she liked in the moment, and she went for it. And the next thing you know, she knocked up cohabitating with somebody, making grilled cheese sandwiches and rocking a child. That's what happened.
But that's why I think
explain to y'all.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me explain to y'all like communication, right? When a man hears that from a woman, right? First thing we think of is, excuse my French, she's a hoe, right? That's if a woman came and told me, you're not my boyfriend, I just want to date, I don't want to be exclusive to you, I just want to have the freedom to do what I want to do and date who I want to date. Just subconsciously, that's telling us that, she got a lot of guys who she messing with, right? That's just how it is. Not knowing that, she just
doing what you're doing.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. They'd be okay with it until they get upset, and then all of a sudden, you a hoe. Wait a minute.
So
you were down with it. What?
So when we hear that, and it comes to us as, she's a hoe, we not gonna put too much energy into really courting her like we should do a woman, right? So I think a lot of men don't need the truth, right? Because especially, our egos ain't gonna.
Y'all ego can't handle it.
I don't want you date all these other dudes. I don't want that. Because
but dating is not. It doesn't mean you're being physical.
Well, that's the thing. If you're getting physical, is that a problem?
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're getting physical. We can go to the movies. We can go to a party. That don't mean we doing.
I understand.
Miss Javonda did it. Miss Javonda went to movies and went to plays, and I wasn't laying in the bed.
Business. Come on now.
Laying in the bed. You didn't want to lay in the bed with, but you was laying in the bed with somebody.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
I really wasn't. I mean, I don't know what to say. I really wasn't.
But if a woman is having sex with multiple men at the same time, is that a problem?
No.
If she's not telling people, then yes, I think it's a problem. Yeah. Don't be telling people you're exclusive if you're not exclusive. But if you're not exclusive, go ahead, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about the communication and the honesty. Just be honest. Whoever being honest, whatever. But I mean, I think that it's a problem if a woman is sleeping with multiple men for men, because y'all got these egos and y'all get, even though y'all simultaneously doing the same exact thing.
But here's the thing.
What's happening now?
Keep it to yourself until you're ready to be with me exclusively. Don't tell me that you dated and you just want to do you, because in my mind, like, go ahead and do you then. Like, I don't want to know about it.
That sounds real personal.
I just don't want to know about it.
That sounds real personal.
Yeah, it is. That's me. Because I got to imagine.
That sounds like manipulation.
Yeah, I got.
But again, it's smart, I guess.
I don't want to know.
I don't know. But again, it's the standard. Like, women do have a tougher standard on being sexually active according to men's perspective, what men want versus what women expect from men. Like, it's more of a taboo for women than men. So this one of those double standards that unfortunately do matter.
And that's my point too, because since they have this,
it matters to y'all.
Exactly.
They're going to address their situations.
But if y'all want us, then it matters. Like, if you want a man, then that matters.
A lot of women dress their situations up so they won't be a hoe, right? But in the reality, they is doing what we doing. They like, women have desires.
We all hoes out here.
But they dress their situations up as what you say, Jovo? I had a dating guy and a guy I went to church with.
I
mean, listen. My reputation will speak for itself. Okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
because
just
you did it.
saying. No. I'm just saying I wasn't that girl. You didn't hear me. You didn't hear about bedside manner and my name in the same sentence. You just didn't. I mean, you didn't. I wasn't. That was I. My grandmother taught me how to court, and I did not have to remove any clothing to do so. That's just what it was. I
And not
didn't.
personally, you. Not saying you did it, but you know, a lot of women, like you said, since society labels women as beneath as a whore or whatever when they dating around, so a lot of women tend to try to use different terms to try to describe what they're going through with men, and they leaving out like all the other things because they don't want to be labeled as a whore. But I'm not saying you, but I just noticed since
Yeah.
I was raised with like a lot of female cousins, and I just know like they go through the same thing men go through. We just talk differently, and we act differently, but they're interacting with men just because men interact with women, women interact with men. I mean, we have sexual desires, it's happening. But I understand why a woman would not just come out and be like, yeah, you know, I'm boning like 3 dudes, 4 dudes. What now? You know what? Because
Y'all keep comparing dating and boning. That's
because
not. They're not
Man, that's what
mutually
people
exclusive,
do.
guys.
That's what people do.
No,
listen,
no, no,
you're not
no.
about
Wait.
That's what y'all do.
I'm going to ask Miss TJ, and then I'm gonna ask our residents, marriage, family, and therapist person. Like when you hear that word dating, because notice I said dating and courting, because I think that this generation they don't know exactly what courting is, and I think dating, I think courting, I think sex. They might live on the same street, but they don't live in the same house. If y'all get what I'm saying, am I making sense?
You making
So
perfect sense because you can have sex with somebody and never date them.
Sounds
Never
good.
I
court them,
understand what
all
you're
those
saying.
things.
yes.
Well,
So
I
what do you
understand
think,
you're saying.
Miss TJ?
I'm gonna ask a couple of questions if I may. Rashad, how old are you?
33.
Darwin, how old are you?
38.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is because I I don't know. I guess y'all could be my daughter's age. I agree completely with Jobo, because I know when I was in college, I went on a lot of dates. I went to military balls with people. I went to movies. I went to, and dances. I did, and those were apart from the relationships I actually had in college. So, and to Jovo's point, there were, even though we didn't have social media, it's not like you didn't. If a female was out there, that you want you to know who she was.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's not like that didn't happen. Social media is new, but people with bad reputations are not. Okay, so it's not. But again, it wasn't looked at if you went out on a date with someone that you automatically screwing them. I think we have lost because y'all don't know how to do it. I'm just saying that you automatically assume that's what's happening. And then on top of that, there is no in a legal term, meeting of the minds. A meeting of the minds is to understand what each person is doing. To Cannon's point, the communication, to make sure everybody has a clear understanding of what is happening, whether it's a title or not. It is a meeting of the minds that you understand what dating means and what whatever you all are doing together means. And that is what's not happening. So there are the assumptions that are going on that men assume, because I had many a guy friends who were just guy friends that I took home, that they couldn't go home for Thanksgiving, so they came to my house. But in y'all's logic, y'all would have said, "Oh, she must be screwing all of them." No, nope. But again, unfortunately, that's where we are. So I feel bad for y'all. Because even in my husband dated me. Now we had the meeting of the minds. I said, listen, we were dating for a while. I said, no, I want you to understand something. And again, we are in our 50s, because we had a meeting of the minds. I said, if we do this, we together. You do understand that, right? I said, so if you ain't trying to be together, it was nice knowing you. But that was a 50 something me. The 20 something and 30 something me wasn't quite having the meeting of the minds concept. Yeah, I was like, hey, stop it. Stop it. But
Hey,
yes.
all I'm saying is I don't. My experience, my age range, whatever. Younger, of course, like in my 20s and stuff. These girls be out here.
And you know, I understand what you're saying, and I tell my wife this all the time. I say, you're not a typical woman. So most of the time when I'm talking about women, I'm not talking about my wife. It's because I know it's always one-offs to everything, right? And so like last week, I told you all, you ladies are not like the standard of when I'm talking about a woman. And normally a woman, if she's dating a guy, 9 times 10, she's going to have sex with him if they keep dating, right? So I'm not talking about your type, but I think majority of the women that's dating, I think they expect sex, and I think the men that they're dating expect sex too. Not the first date or the second date, but I think they're going into it knowing like, okay, he's going to shower me gifts, he's going to pay for dinner, we might have sex, but it's a certain way he's going to have sex. We're going to go about it. I'm not saying she's going to bust down, but I think when you're dating, everything is involved in that, not just the courting part, that going out to the movies, the going to meet your family, but sex is involved with dating to me. And I don't think we can talk about just the movie aspect of it and not talk about the sex aspect of it without being labeled as like, oh, all you want to do is have sex. Yeah, that's part of what I want to do. Yeah, I'm taking you out, I'm spending time with you. I want sex too. I want all of it. Everything goes into that box with me when it's dating. You know, I'm not going into no dating. I'm not dating nobody to be like, oh yeah, we about to enjoy this movie, and then we go home and just talk about the movie. Now we go enjoy this movie. We go have a nightcap, and we go wake up in the morning. You go cook me eggs. That's how I'm thinking. Like, you know, that's a perfect date for me.
He bust my bubble, Miss Chufa.
Honestly, man. Go ahead,
Hey.
Date for me. I want it all. We can do the nightcap. We can do the intellectual.
I'm speechless right now.
People be having sex and not even dating. Like people
Let's hear from the clinician.
I was gonna ask LaKanya when she explains dating and courting. You know, how does she break it down?
Dating is collecting data. So you're gathering information to determine if this person is going to be compatible with me. Courting, you're dating to get married. Is what I define it as, or what I've heard it defined as and seen it defined as. And so I was taught that we have a little mixed up in our society. We'll date to marry when we really should marry to date. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's an ongoing learning process. It's an ongoing dating. And sometimes that just stops. But from this conversation, what I'm hearing is that it sounds like for some people, dating never got started. You never really were dating. You weren't really collecting data. You were going after what you wanted. Yeah. And that's interesting.
Well,
and that's fine as long as it is communicated. I do agree with everyone who said, you know, clear communication, you know, but also with communication, comprehension. People will say, well, I told them, or I said this, but if the person did not comprehend what you said, it was not clearly communicated.
I like that.
Ashley, you want to finish your story?
Well, I missed a lot of the conversation.
Now, we want to hear that juicy story you was about to tell us.
It's not.
We want to hear the juicy gossip.
It's not that juicy. Basically, we were dating for a couple months. And when I date, you know, I use the term dating and courting interchangeably. I know a lot of Christian people do not. They think that dating involves sex and courting does not. Me personally, if I'm dating you, that does not mean I'm sleeping with you or ever will. Like, so to me, dating is what you decide it is. Just because the society says that you must be sleeping with somebody because you're dating them, that is not something I agree with. So I was dating this person or courting him, whatever you want to say. And I told him that I wasn't sure, you know, where I wanted it to go. I was still really, like you were saying, LaKanya, collecting data. And I wasn't sure. I was not sure. And so I let him know that because he was communicating to me that he wanted something more. And I didn't want to lead him on. So I basically told him one time in particular that I wanted him to date other people. And then the second time, because I don't think he really got it, I had to tell him again, because I think by then he wanted a little bit more of me. Like he wanted me to, make him more of a priority, communicating more with him. And I just wasn't feeling that at that time. So I told him again, I said, I am not sure where I want this to go. And I bring that up because, I shared this story with a couple other people, and specifically in a social media group that I'm a part of. And a lot of the people, like, especially the guys, were like, well, you led him on. And I'm like, it's just interesting to hear you guys talk about the whole Danny Lee and the baby situation the way you do, because a lot of men, if the tables were turned, they wouldn't like it, So to me, it just seems like hypocritical to, on one hand, say, oh, don't expect to be considered this man's girlfriend just because, y'all are so-called dating. But then on the flip side, if you're dating somebody and the man feels like he's not getting what he wants to get out of it, then the woman is considered wrong if she continues to date him. It just sounds like a double standard to me. And it doesn't suit anybody except for men. I just wanted to bring that up. As a single woman dating, people say, oh, girl, you got to get him to tell but, or to you check that yes box. But it's like, as women, they don't afford us that, if we accept a date, they'll even tell you, well, you should be sleeping with them by day 3. And I'm like, what? Just because I accepted a date from you? So I just find it very hypocritical.
Mm-hmm. Can I just throw in there though? Like I didn't read or know about the Danny Lee and the baby situation. I'm learning about it from just listening to this conversation. I could really care less, but I look at the baby like, should we use him as the standard for men? Like the baby is like that prime example of like the girls like the bad boys kind of thing. It's like the baby's not the dude. Like obviously, I will put that more on Danny Lee for just being with the baby. Period. And they had a child together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's like duh, the baby's not gonna do you right, like duh. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's my thing. It's like, look, man, it's obvious this dude is not the relationship type of dude, but we see that situation a lot with women getting with dudes like the baby. I mean, of course, not a famous rapper, but just like those dudes who was like clear cut, like he's not a dude you should take seriously. And then you're shocked when you're in this situation. You're shocked when you're left, a single mother, stuff like that. So it's just like, I feel like we shouldn't even use the baby as like the standard of a quote unquote good guy to be like.
But it sounds like a lot of men agree with him, though. There are a lot of men on the line online really co-signing him. I just had a conversation with one of your friends, Rashad, who
I know you're talking about
an upstanding man, and he's like, "Well, she should have known." And I agree. Like, I am not a proponent of women shacking up with men, having sex with men that are not their husbands. Like, I'm not a proponent of that. But at the same time, and I agree, like people don't talk about this enough. Like attracts like, you know what I mean? Like people tend to mate with people who they're compatible with. So, she shouldn't have been with him because of his, of his character, but obviously she's not a certain type of, she's of kind of like a similar character, so they're kind of in the same boat, it goes both ways, basically, is what I'm saying. Like, we can look at the baby's behavior and say, oh, well, she shouldn't have been with a man like that. But then but there are a lot of guys who would look at Danny Lee's behavior like they were in the manosphere, making videos about how she was so trash and she was so this. But the truth of the matter is, like, they're a reflection of each other, and I agree. Like, you can say, I don't agree actually that we can't use him as an example, because a lot of people were co-signing him. And I don't want to talk so much just about that situation as much as I want to talk about, just the, like, about the fact that, and you guys said this to me, and I'm learning. I'm corrected. I stand corrected. People are like, she should have found out for sure where she stood, but they lived together. you know, and it's a little different when when you're with men who have money, right? But they were living together, vacationing together, posting up with each other. I mean, to me, it looked like a relationship. So on one hand, it's like you guys are saying she should have got him to communicate, but then on the flip side, had it been the other way around, the story would have been, well, she taking his dates and she leading him on. She's just using him. All I'm saying is that it sounds hypocritical. It just
Well,
sounds.
if I can just like this is I don't like when people say she should have known. Sh you don't know what type of manipulation he used to get her to think what she was thinking, right? We can always look at the look at it from the outside in, right? But we don't know what he was telling her. We do know that he put a baby in her. So whatever he was telling her, the fact that they about to start a family, whatever type of toxic family they about to have, it's still a family nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
And then the fact that they went to go get a house together and behind closed doors, I know from myself, I've told women a lot of things that I wanted to tell them to get them to act how I wanted them to act. And that's just how men do. And that's manipulation. And we were born, like I said last week, we were born and raised to do these things. I'm going to tell a woman XYZ so I can get a XYZ out of her. And that's what he did. So you can just sit up and say she should have known. How she should have known. What could he have told her? What do we know of what he told her? We don't know everything he told her behind closed doors. We just don't know. We don't know what type of background she came from. We don't know her triggers. We don't know what she's been through in her life that makes her fall so easily for men. We don't know any of this. So for us to get down on her when she's clearly has done nothing wrong except for made a bad decision about having a child with a person she thought she knew, because that's all she thought she knew him probably. Like we can look at him and be like, well, the baby did this in the news, he's doing that. But behind closed doors, men are totally different with their woman. And I know this for a fact. Men are sweet talking their women, tell them, well, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna do this. When the baby come, it's gonna be different. XYZ, that's what we do. And so we just can't sit up here and blame that on her.
And that's why I'm like,
oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm done.
No, I was going to say that's why I'm kind of like a little confused about why we're putting so much emphasis on hearing him say, oh, you my woman, because a man could say anything. He could say, yeah, I love you, you know, but it's the actions that are what matter to me. But what you guys are saying, well, it don't matter. He didn't say it. You know, he didn't say you were my woman. You know, he only treated me like a woman, moved me into his house and everything. And you know, we spending time with each other's families and so it's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. It does not make sense to me.
I wouldn't be surprised if I see them 2 weeks from now. Cut it up.
That's what my daughter said. I would like to hear from the clinicians, please, if I may.
Go ahead, LaKanya. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, I hear what you're saying, that you're thinking that because they went traveling, they did all these things, but like TJ was saying, like you can do that with a friend, you know. So I think that's why so many people will say, well, what did they actually say out of their mouth? Because their actions can lie just like their words can too. So really, I think that it takes time. It's not about the action or the words. It's the effort and the time and the consistency. You know, like, what are you showing me over a duration of time? And I think what happens, people move too fast, you know, and then before you know it, they're living together, they have a baby, and they really don't even know this person. But if you were to watch their patterns over some time, then you would have saw that this person is not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know.
Right.
Pattern has been.
My mother said you have to go through seasons with people, and it's, you know, I talked about it on you know, even on my channel, shameless plug. You know,
go ahead.
From the time I met my daughter's father to the time I got pregnant, we had been dating maybe 2 to 3 months, and I was pregnant, and he lied to me from day one. From the time I met him, he was engaged. Did you hear me?
Wow.
He was engaged, steady telling me he loved me.
Yeah.
Then, you know, then he broke up with me because he told me an old girlfriend got pregnant and he wanted to do the right thing. But the truth of the matter, he was with her the whole time. I was at his house. We took trips. He came to my house. All this kind of stuff. Hung out. I had no clue, and then kept our daughter a secret for the first 4 months of her life.
You said this happened after 2 months of dating?
I got pregnant within 3 to 4 months of dating because we were together a total of maybe 6 months. So I admit that was a stupid to the point. If I would have not moved fast and watched the pattern of behavior over time,
Right.
but I didn't. But again, I moved fast, and he was telling me the things I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear it from him. So, and he was not a Pookie or a Railway. He was not an entertainer. He was a man. And I was an irresponsible woman.
Yeah. Okay. May I comment on that? Because I have a friend who's in a similar situation, and she got pregnant early on after meeting and dating and stuff. And I'm talking to her. It's like, why would you have a man's child after just knowing him for a few months? Even if you believe it's love or whatever, it's not real love if you just knew him for a few months or dated him for a few months. I would just say this, and I say this to all women: commitment. Having a man's child, whether you're together or not, is the biggest commitment you can give to a man. Carrying, delivering, and raising a man's seed is the biggest commitment you can give to a man. And that's not something bigger than marriage, because you can end marriage. You can't end being a parent. You're a parent always. So that is the biggest commitment. What women need to realize, and I guess do and understand, is do not make that ultimate, unseverable commitment to a man unless that man makes the ultimate commitment to you, which there could even be. Marriage can't even be a commitment matched to parenting. Because like I said, marriage can end, but at least make him give you that ultimate commitment before you give that forever commitment to a man. That's my advice to all women.
Let me chime in.
I'm curious to know how do you make a man do that?
I agree with you, Rashad. That is the ultimate commitment. But at the same time, it should be that way for men too. If I impregnate a woman, that should be my ultimate commitment too. And it's a shame that we don't value ourselves more than what we do. Because if I'm getting a woman pregnant, I'm about to share my lineage with her. That should be my commitment as well. It shouldn't just be on the woman. And I don't too much like how when a man makes a dumb mistake, that automatically makes the woman stupid and irresponsible.
Because we know how society is. Who, at the end of the day, whether it's right or wrong, fair or not, who's the responsibility going to fall more on? 95% is going to be the woman, because the woman usually keeps custody. It's not fair. It's definitely not fair, but that's what it is. So women do have to be more cognizant of that, knowing that the responsibility, unfortunately, is going to fall on them more in these situations.
See, just by saying that.
I want to hear what Kanye had to say, please.
Oh no, I was just asking when I heard Rashawn, I think you said make the man commit. And I was just wondering, well, how do you make a man commit, in your opinion?
So I guess I'll just say it like this: don't have the child if that man has not given you the ultimate commitment. So, basically that's what I'm saying.
That's marriage or what?
So get rid of the child.
Ultimate commitment?
Marriage or some form of I would say marriage, personally, but I understand that maybe not everybody wants marriage, but this just understanding and knowing that this man is committed to me, and that's really not something you can ascertain after a few months.
And that's also
you're absolutely right.
So how can we say what makes a woman feel comfortable with commitment, right? So if a woman feels comfortable with a man after 6 months or whatever the case may be, that's on her. That's her feelings, right? So if she has a baby with him and he does the dummy, don't take care of the baby or is lying, in return, guess what? We shift the blame right back to her after he's not a good father, after he wasn't a good friend, after he was lying. I just don't like how everything is always shifted back to the woman when we know we was lying, when we know we was manipulating. And we still shift the blame back to you were stupid. Why did you have the baby? You should have got an abortion. Those are the things that I hear a lot from men, right? So I understand. I agree with you, Shai. A woman should do better collecting data and stuff like that, investigating men and how they get down. But at the same time, it's only so much they can do, because guess what? She can date a guy for 3 years and think she know everything about the guy and have a baby with him, and then guess what? He's gone. She can get married to him, and after 6 years of marriage, he's gone. So I don't think it's a time limit on a genuine person. Like if a person is a good person, they go be a good person when you meet them. They go be a good person 6 months from now or 6 years from now. It's So I just can't label a woman irresponsible or stupid because a man did some dumb stuff or was a liar, because I've come from that. I came from that. I was a womanizer. I was very toxic. I was one of those guys that just did whatever I wanted to do with women to get what I wanted. So now looking back, I understand like what a woman is going through. You know what I'm saying? I understand that. And it took like a lot of women to just check me on it. And once I started getting checked by real intelligent women, and just not the women that was looking for like just the fun stuff, and I wanted to get the more serious stuff in life, I had to take them serious. And what they was telling me was right. I was doing all the wrong stuff. I cannot shift blame on a woman when I'm the one who kicked it off.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing too. Also, I want to say, as it relates to my ex-husband, because we ultimately got married and divorced, but the part that I played was the fact, to your point, Rashad, and also LaKanya, I moved way too quickly. And in moving way too quickly, I was irresponsible with taking birth control pills correctly. So that's the part I played. And I'm honest about that. But I had nothing to do with the fact that he lied to me from day one. So my point being, you could have a meeting of the minds, like we said, and I could come with the meeting of the minds saying this, but if you're not honest, it's still going to end up the same way. So again, it goes back to what LaKanya says. Dating is a data collection process. And that's how we should look at it on the male side as well as the female side. We should practice some type of restraints in our loins, because that's when the thing starts to get all messed up. And I'm speaking from my own experience. Many experiences, only one child though. Many experiences, so yeah, I never said I didn't want to have sex, but again, understanding that sex clouds the judgment in many instances. Mostly for women, not all, but most. Why?
I think we're missing out on wise counsel.
The man enters the woman.
I think
the man enters the woman. So that is why. I'm sorry, say again.
I think we're missing out on wise counsel. We talk about data collection, but we're not just hoarding that data. We should be talking to people we trust. I know when I met my husband, he spent time with my uncles, my grandfather, my father. He wasn't just me and him all the time. He was off with the men, spending time together. They're going to see things that I can't see because I'm knee deep in love with him, So y'all talking about, she should have seen or he should have seen. This is why we're supposed to have a village. Stuff like this.
Yes.
I don't know, why discernment, missed that situation or whatnot. But somebody should have been able to step in and talk to you, Ms. TJ, and tell you, girl, have you spent time with his parents? Have you done X, Y, and Z? Have we met him? What's going on? You trying to have his baby 3 months? Like, come on now, sis. Take a step back. That's where your wise counsel comes in.
They
did.
did.
If they didn't,
I didn't listen.
That's where rapport, which is where I was going to go next.
Don't listen.
That's where rapport comes from. You can't just do this thing one time. Rapport means it's going to be consistent. You're going to have to always have that connection. It can't just be, I see you acting bad this time, I'm going to check it. You have to always be there. So I think we're missing the whole counsel unit. You don't date, you date each other, but you're extensions of your unit that you come from. So
absolutely,
you are, but there's only so much control that when you come to, because again, I was 27 years old. I was 27 years old, had been on my own.
That's wrong. I'm 29.
But there was not only so much my mother was going to be able to tell me. Now, it doesn't make what she was trying to tell me wrong, because she was right. But I'm sure with Danny Lay, from what I saw, and this is just an example, but from what it looked like, she came from a 2-parent household. But again, a lot of times when it's crazy. Temporary
I mean, rapport
insanity
is
is what I
not
say.
determined by your position in the family. You can have more rapport with a great aunt than you do with your actual father. So just saying, oh, she came from a 2-parent household, that doesn't determine they had good rapport with their daughter. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything,
It
to
could
be
be
quite
anything.
honest.
Parents
Your
were
grandmother may have told you, but if she
give
didn't build a lot of rapport with you, then obviously that fell on deaf ears. So, it's just rapport it's gonna transcend blood relations. It's gonna be a connection.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, especially when I sit with clients, I explain to them it's two factors, it's two main things we got to look at when you keep repeating behavior. And that's your life history, okay, things that have influenced some of your behavior over time, things you experienced. It could be trauma, it could be growing up in a certain house, it could be witnessing a relationship that was closer to you, mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt and uncle, and then lifestyle factors, how you live and what you do. You know, um, I like what Raven said about the collecting of the data. Um, back in the day, I don't even. It's so different now. And I know we got a topic that's coming up talking about raising kids and all those things, but it's so different now because I remember the first time that because with me, if you made it to Middle Georgia, if you made it to my grandma's house, that means I'm taking you seriously, okay? Because I've dated, I've courted, but only two made it to the door, and one ultimately put a ring on it. You see what I'm saying? So if you made it to her front door, that means you had arrived, okay? You had arrived, and I remember my whole family pulled up. I'm talking aunts and uncles down the street. I'm talking uncles already outside, pulling him out the car because of the way that I carried myself. And that's what it goes back to what I was saying, lifestyle factors. Like when I was dating, I didn't let all of them think that they were all worthy to go up the road to see my family, because all of them were not. And I don't want to be mean when I say that, but that's just what the reality was. LaKanya said dating and gathering, and some of the data that I found, I ain't want it no more. And so they were not worthy to enter that threshold of my circle of my family. But when my husband met my family, they wanted to make sure that you have what it takes to take her to the next level if you are serious with her. It wasn't, us sitting and hanging out or whatever. He was coming up when I was home, taking me out, and elders used to ask this all the time, these different things, who your people are, where you from. They didn't only ask that just to be nosy. They asked that because back in the day, depending upon what your last name was, there was patterns of behavior that those elders would observe. So if you had a certain last name, grandmama and them would say, oh, this is what they known for, and this is the behavior.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to steer you clear, of that, but also I'm with Miss TJ. Some of us, we were hard headed, and we either missed out on a great guy or we linked up with something that we should have stayed away from. So I can see the both sides of that.
Yeah. I love Jovanda, you telling your story about courting, and dating. Because the world has moved, we have moved so far away from that now. Now, like you guys were saying earlier, people aren't even dating. And then now, if you say you're dating somebody, they automatically think you're having sex with them. I specifically and strategically put you on this show because I knew that your story is so different. Like both of our stories are very different. And, it's just unfortunate now that, if you tell anybody that, oh, she was sleeping with somebody. She was being a hoe. People assume that if a woman is dating, that she's out here sleeping around.
Right.
But that's really how it should be done. Like I remember, I was reading a discussion online, and a girl was saying how, the same thing you were saying. She has never introduced anybody to her family. And they were like, oh, that's because you date the wrong man. And I'm like, no, that's not what that means. That just means she's particular about who she dates. And she knows, you know, the natural progression of things. She's not trying to move too fast. Like, but the world, because of how everybody is so used to doing things, how dating and courting should be done, they look down upon it, you know. And I definitely want to talk a little bit more about this village. Like, I want to talk about that so much more. Like, you made me think of a couple things. Now, you know, there isn't a real strong village. Sometimes we have young girls who don't want to hear, you know, what they need to hear. But then it's also hard to tell people what you're experiencing because people make assumptions. You know, now, you know, you can't take nobody to church because, oh, you saw her last Sunday. She was with that guy, you know, oh, she was somebody else now. Like, there is no village, you know. And I want to talk too about, you know, how there are all these great, amazing men out here and these great, amazing women out here. And people tell you that all the time. But for some reason, we aren't linking up. Like, why isn't that so-and-so can't tell so-and-so about her son or her great nephew who who's looking for somebody too, you know, and tell their friend whose daughter is looking for somebody. It's like, we don't do that. There really isn't a village in dating anymore. And that definitely warrants a whole other conversation. TJ, can you wrap us up on that conversation? Did you want to have any last thoughts about that? And then we're going to move on.
No, I mean, it was good. I don't have anything additional to add. I mean, no, I don't. Okay. Let's move right along.
Okay. Did anyone else have any last comments you all wanted to say?
Yes.
Okay.
To all my young people out there in YouTube land. Okay. You can court. You can date. It's okay. You ain't got to move in with them. You ain't got to be living together on day 90th. No, you don't. It works. It works. I want to tell, because there's so many women out there and young ladies that they think that, oh, if I don't do exactly what society says or what he wants, so if I'm if I don't over sexualize myself or I don't do all these different things, I'm not gonna get the person that I'm meant to be with. And it's like, it's a lie. It's a lie. You can have values and standards and still get the guy. I'm just saying. So that's what I wanna end with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the guy that doesn't understand that ain't for you. Like, I just posted up something in, Battle of the Sexes group. That's a little plug for, our guy, Steven, Battle of the Sexes on Facebook. I posted an experience that I just literally had this week where a guy reached out to me after months, and he saw my profile. I just uploaded a dating profile. I had taken it off for some time, and he saw my profile. He's like, "Oh, you're back on the market, but you're not ready for all the things. You're not ready for everything that is entailed in dating." And I knew what he was talking about, but I'm like, what he meant was sexual intimacy. And wow. I'm like, I literally went out with you 2 times, and he broke it off with me the first time because he assumed I wasn't interested in him. And that's the common thread, that if you're not sleeping with the guy by the third date, these guys are assuming that you playing him, and then they think guys who are willing to date you and they ain't sleeping with you are lames or simps or they're playing the field until they get the pants. But it's like, no, like every woman she could very well like you, but she's not, because she's smart and she's using this sexual discretion, that you all say women need to have. She's not trying to jump in the bed with you. She hardly knows you. She don't know your habits. She don't know how you really feel about her. She doesn't know if you even have another woman. She doesn't know anything about you. Nothing. And so his whole thought was, you keep counting the dates, but I'm counting the time. I had talked to him for 2 weeks, but really a month. It was a month because I was out of town. And so but he kept in contact, but it was real shallow. Hey, how you doing? Just real shallow. Hey, how you doing? What you do today? Nothing. And then I came into town. We literally went out on 2 dates. And he broke it off with me because he said that, oh, you must not be interested. You're talking like intimacy is going to be a problem and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, I have seen you 2 times in my life.
You dodged the bullet.
You should not even be talking to me about sex. I have seen
That's
you 2
the
times in my life, but I shared this experience on the group, and
Yes.
a lot of men are like, well, you were just using him. You just wanted him for dates. And I understand women do that these days, but it's so bad. The dating
I've done it.
thing is so the dating thing is so bad that you can't just date in court how you're supposed to.
It's a lot of people out there that think that you're supposed to explain to them why you say no or why you say you're not interested. A lot of people think that you as an adult need to explain your choices and decisions to them. And Ashley, while you're still out here in this dating game, let me tell you something. Right. You don't have to explain nothing to nobody. He was not the one. Yeah. Or he was not the compatible partner at the time. Right. The answer is no. Let's move on. Because a lot of adults are actually out here thinking, and I've seen men and women do this, that you owe them an explanation as to why you set a boundary with them. Yeah. No, you don't have to explain your boundaries to nobody. This is where I draw my line. I caught a lot of flack in high school about that, about, guys like, I even had cousins who would, tease me like, such and such said that, he was asking about you. And my cousin would put his head down because I would know the guy if he's been sexually active with another girl. And you already know what the answer gonna be, bruh, as the young people would say. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it right now. I don't care who you are. You could be the greatest guy in 10th, 11th, 12th grade, whatever. Not going to do it. Yeah. That was my boundary. And I learned at an early age, I don't have to explain to you why I don't want to do something.
Yeah. I think that's the prime example of the type of.
Let Darren say what he wants to say.
Oh, okay.
No, I just wanted to say, I'm gathering that it's just a very big disconnect from men and women and what we expect when we're dating and what you all expect when we're dating. And I think, not tonight or whatever, but I think we should just all try to tackle that and see how we can come to some type of resolution about that, because it's not going to get better because the disconnect is so big. And I know where it comes from because how we were raised, how men were raised, opposed to how women was raised. And it just got we grew up and we think that when I date a woman, if I spend time and money with her, obviously she likes me, so obviously she wants to have sex with me. So what's the problem? That's how I was thinking, right? But now I'm got like you women thinking like, I just want to have date and go to church and the movies, and I ain't, and hey, if I like you, that don't mean nothing,
I like the way you changed your voice when you said that.
You might be the sexiest man on earth. I still don't want. I'm still not. But like, why hide that? Why? I feel like don't tease yourself. Please yourself. If you see a man, you dated him and y'all into it, you can have sex with him. What's the problem with that? Just do what you want to do for yourself. Protect yourself. Don't have no babies and make it a situation that you have to be with long term. But if you enjoying yourself with a young man and he's attractive to you, why do that? I mean, that's how I'm thinking. Like, why is we doing this? Why are you sitting around?
We just had a whole conversation on why women would do that. You just talking about what Rashad said.
I know.
I just love the way he changes his voice. I love the way he sat back and changed his voice.
We had a conversation, but the conversation because the babies and the other drama that comes along with it when you don't protect yourself. But if you don't have a baby with the man, you can leave him. Now that you have a baby with him, you're stuck with him. But if you have sexual desires with somebody that you're having fun with, why not? Throw on birth
because
control,
now you an HOE. You know what, men, y'all.
Why we listen to everybody else?
Y'all are the only ones who would ban somebody for sleeping with you. Like she slept with me on the first day.
Y'all just told me that everybody don't be knowing y'all stuff and y'all got good, bad side manners. So you're not a hoe because don't nobody know what you did, right?
Oh Lord.
That's what you
Oh
just told
Lord.
This definitely should be a topic for another show, though. Like
Yeah.
Can we move
expectations
on?
in relationships. It's a good
Expectations.
conversation.
Rashad, I think that's an excellent point. This is definitely another show. I got and I got something to come with it too.
I
me
Absolutely.
too. Me too.
put it in your back pocket, y'all. We're gonna move on, okay? All right. Thank you all so much. So here is the next topic. It's a heavy topic, okay? Is everybody good?
Mhm.
Everybody good? Y'all can stay on? Okay. All right. Here's the next topic: domestic violence. Domestic violence in the Black community. From where does it stem and how can we fix it? I don't claim to be an expert, okay? That's why I asked the people to come onto the show tonight because they have different expertise and different experiences that they can offer to this show. But I did do a little bit of research, and not just today, but I've read a lot about domestic violence and learned a lot about domestic violence in our communities, and it's alarming and it's scary. And I want to talk about it, and I want to have a productive conversation about it. In light of what happened with DaBaby and Danny Lee, I noticed that a lot of YouTube channels were talking about domestic violence, but I did not see that they were talking about it from a solutions-based perspective. It was more, well, what's wrong with women that they're hitting men now, and just more like gossipy, like, oh, did you hear what happened? It was gossipy. I really want us to have more of a solutions-based discussion, and I want us to dig a little deeper about where this stems from. Here are a few stats that we have about domestic violence. Okay. It says, according to the 2010-2012 National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, nationally, 45% of Black women experience contact, sexual violence, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. The same survey found that 40% of Black men experience contact, sexual violence, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Black victims were significantly more likely to be killed by an acquaintance than white victims. About 17% of Black women in the U.S. experience sexual violence other than rape by an intimate partner during their lifetime. 15% of Black men experience the same. Okay. Nearly 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men in the U.S. have experienced rape, physical violence, and/or stalking by a partner. Okay. And there are many other stats that are very alarming. Okay. I cross-checked some of this data, and pretty much across the board, sources say the same thing. Okay, I'm going to link these sources in the comment section, but some of them come directly from the CDC website. Some of them come from the domestic violence statistics website as well. And so you all can look at those. But I want to ask you all, where does domestic violence stem from? What do you all think? Who likes to chime in first?
If I can.
Okay.
So I actually do facilitate family violence and intervention periodically. I think that where it stems from, first we got to understand that it's so many different types of abuse that kind of coincides with domestic violence. We talking physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse, psychological abuse. I think a lot of times we look at the actual physical violence when we talk about domestic violence, and there's all different types of violence that occurs within domestic violence. We also have to, look at as well the roles that people play in abuse. And I think one of the biggest roles is three main roles that I kind of talk about when I'm treating this: abuser, you got your target, which is like your victim, and then you have the bystander. And I think that in the African American community, bystanders contribute to a lot of this behavior. We are so, not as I say, do as I say, not as I do. We are so, don't get in other people's business. What happens between a man and a woman stays between a man and a woman. All of these generational codes of conduct that we've been kind of passing on and passing on, it just perpetuates the cycle. It just perpetuates the cycle. And then you get a person in a situation where they don't even realize that they're being abused because they've been told for so long by many different generations or different age groups or different people in their family that this is a norm when it really isn't a norm. So, I want to bring that out as well, that I think a lot of times we look at domestic violence and we look at just the actual physical violence part. I don't know if you all saw on Twitter, and I think Instagram, the NFL player that it was caught on the security camera in the home. He physically attacked the mother of his child inside of the home, and listening to her doing interviews and listening to her talk about his patterns of behavior. Yes, there has been abuse going on within this relationship for a long time, but because people don't understand that there's so many different types of abuse, no one wants to call it domestic violence until someone starts putting hands on someone, when really domestic violence started way before that. So I do want to point that out as we start this discussion.
Thank you. Where does it stem from? I know, TJ, earlier you were sharing a little bit of your story, and you said that you got all the way to your 50s before you started or before you experienced domestic violence. What do you think it was that got you to, and I'm not saying it's your fault. Let me be clear about that, okay? When somebody hits somebody else, it's their fault that they did that, right? But I do believe from what I've learned, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've learned, sometimes women and men have certain internal issues, whether it be self-esteem or fear, fear of leaving, that keeps them in a situation where they're being abused. What do you think it stems from? Like, why do you think you allowed that to go on? And I hate to say allowed, but you know what I mean. Why do you think you sustained that? And why do you think your partner, I know you can't speak for him, but just what do you think is the reason why he even got to that point where he was abusing you?
Well, he didn't actually put his hands on me to the very last day. But to your point, Ms. Jovo, you're absolutely right. That was the culmination. It had started early on with degrading me and talking down to me, cursing me, calling me names, actually cursing at me in church. And it's interesting, I think, again, another shameless plug, me and my daughter did, because I wanted to, my daughter, you talk about bystanders. Wow.
Take your time. Take your time. And we got you.
Wow. I wasn't ready for that one. To see my parents see their 50-year-old child and feel so helpless. And I am the woman, and even when I told my husband about it when I met him, he was like shocked, because I am not that person. I would be the person that would cut you off at the knees. A military officer for 20 plus years. I'm in your face. But it goes to what you're saying. There was a point in my life I was lonely. My daughter was gone. She was gone living her life in college. I'm by myself. I didn't want to be by myself. And I'm saying to myself, well, because I'm pretty up there in the federal government, making really good money, and understanding that, my selection pool is not going to be, as far as economically speaking. I'm thinking, well, Terry, why don't you just, open your horizons and not be so picky.
Mhm.
So I did. You know, it didn't matter. And I've never been a person that really cared about how much money a man made or anything like that. Because again, if we were going to be together, we were going to be together. But so I did. And and I say with the lies we tell ourselves, because initially, I had talked with my daughter, and when on one show we were saying what I thought I was showing her as a woman versus what she actually saw. And she said what she saw in me is how I dominated in my relationships. That's, so when I met this man, I'm thinking to myself and I'm justifying, I said, well, this guy's just not going to let me run over him. So that's why, he's just not going to let me run over him because I know that I could plow through. So that's how I justified it, that this guy's just not going to let me run over him. But then it started to be more than that. And it was happening and I didn't even realize it was happening. He was, I would make a suggestion and he would, wow. And I was so good, I thought, at because I have a scar on my arm that I've had since I was 16 years old from saving my mother from being abused. So I thought I was really good at being able to scope that kind of stuff out. But it comes from, and I later found out, to your point, Mr. Vonda, he was raised in an environment himself where he saw his father do it to his mother. And that the mother, would get, degraded by the dad. So, and because he felt a sense of inadequacy himself, he tried to make me feel inadequate. And it culminated with, and I later found out he was a con man, basically. Had I done my due diligence, I would have found out that he had a record of assaulting another woman. So, but I think it stems from, for the person who is the victim, you say, the person who is, has a low self-esteem, does not have even though they project this sense of self-worth, but they really kind of questioning it, and the perpetrator is acting off of low self-worth as well. So they want to, because they feel bad about themselves, they're going to make you feel even worse about yourself. So I think that's where it comes from. I'm glad I lived through it. Because I think had my brother not been there, I probably wouldn't have. So I think that's where it comes from.
Okay. All right. Definitely coming from a place of feeling low self-worth or feeling like a little bit of fear. I know TJ, you mentioned about, being at a certain economic status and feeling like, oh man, I'm not, I got to kind of take what I can get, which is, I think a lot of women, I think men kind of see it differently, but really Black women are constantly told we got to kind of take what we can get, right? And we feed into that. You'd be a great woman, with a lot to offer, but we kind of feed into thinking we got to kind of take what we can get. Sometimes.
And that is so untrue, because it's interesting, because my husband is very much, does not let me run over him, but he has never raised his voice to me.
Yeah.
Not once. He has never cursed at me, not once. We have never argued, not once. But he makes his position very clear. and it's just, so it showed me that, again, how I justified it to myself. Well, he's just not going to let me run over. Well, my husband doesn't let me run over him either.
Right.
Right.
And he's very strong and very, but he didn't do it that way. So,
yeah,
live and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And thank you for sharing your story, TJ. And it's sad to me that, it's so rampant in our communities. You know, I knew that men experienced domestic violence, but I did not know that they experienced it at all similar rates than what we do. And so I want the fellas on the panel to talk about that and answer the question, where do you think it stems from?
Mhm.
Who wants to go first? Either one of you.
Well, why was well? I think all of it stems from slavery, of course. Being violent, not knowing how to those deep rooted violent emotions that we have in us just stem from slavery. But the on the well, right now in this conversation, I think I want to talk about control, right? And when a person loses control and they don't know how they lost control, or they don't know how to gain control, and with men, I know we're taught to be violent, right? We're taught to handle our disputes the manly way, right? Let's go outside and duke it out, right? And so if we never really looked into our emotions, tapped into our emotions, and learn how to communicate and deal with those things, it's going to be very hard to get with a woman. And when you start communicating with her, and I guess she's sort of like winning the conversation because to talk to her, and then you start losing control. When you lose control, you don't know what's about to happen, right? And the only thing you can do is go to what you know best, and that's handling like this, right? So and I think that's a big reason why a lot of men find themselves in these situations where they're hitting their woman is because they lose control. They don't know how to talk to them. They mind just go blank because they just don't know how to deal with it. And I think it's very important that all men seek counseling. Especially when you're raised by those older men, and I tell my wife this all the time, like them old fashioned ways, they were good to a certain extent, but they didn't really teach us how to handle ourselves with another person, right? Because a lot of olden days things was not discussed. They they hid a lot of things. They just ignored it, and because they just wanted to be everything to be cool, right? So they just didn't even discuss it. Nowadays, people are starting to discuss it. Women are getting a voice, and it's a big shift, right? And the shift is the men are not adjusting very well to this shift of power and this shift of accountability, right? And I think we're losing control, right? And I think that's what a lot of it stems from. Now I don't know too much about it, as far as like women beating on men and stuff like that, but I know it's happening, and the and I always think about when we talk about domestic violence, when like as kids, right? When your mother asks you, you want a whooping or you want a punishment. I don't know why we always wanted that whooping. Like violence was like really nothing to black people, right? Like, okay, I'll take the whooping. We were so easy, like, whoop my ass. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm going outside. So we'll just take that whooping and go back outside. So I don't understand. And I know it's just still from slavery. Like, we'd just rather take that beat because it's just like nothing else. We just so strong, whatever. That machoism, that strong sense of pride, and just give me the whooping, and not knowing that that's like doing something to us mentally. You know what I'm saying? But we never really tapped into that. And then we get older, and then we whooping our kids. Now they knowing the only way to handle problems is through violence. So I think that's a big thing. I think we need to nip that in the bud as kids, and when we're teaching our kids how to deal with things, we need to try to talk into them instead of threatening to whoop them and inflict pain on them. It's a lot of things, I think every household is different on how they experience domestic violence, because you have people that experience the sexual abuse, the mental abuse, and everything. And I think the more you communicate with it, you can get to the bottom of it. I'm still learning things out about my family now that went on in the past that people hid. You know what I'm saying? So I think the most important part is, like you said, we need to discuss it and have those breakthrough moments with the ones that we love, so we can get down to the root of it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mrs. Understanding, are you with us, Raven? Okay, maybe she has to step away for a second. Lakanya, what do you think?
He pretty much said everything I was thinking myself. The unmanaged emotions. We really don't know how to explain ourselves. We just express it. And so it comes out in a physical form. And that goes for men and women. People don't know how to have conflict resolution. They don't know how to solve problems besides let's fight it out. Let's express it physically. Let me throw something. Let me hit you. So I definitely agree with what he was saying. And also I had that same thought too, as far as slavery and like this mentality of I'm superior, you're inferior to me. I'm going to control you. I'm going to make you do what I want you to do by hitting you. And so it goes back to the issue of control and being in power. And even when you don't feel like you're in power, you try to overpower someone else by, physically attacking them. And to co-sign with Javonda, there is a difference between domestic violence and intimate partner violence. I think people sometimes, connect the two, but you can have a domestic situation with a mom and a son, but intimate partner, of course, is like with someone in the relationship. Right. But also, I think the reason why it continues on is that people won't call the police. This bystander situation, I absolutely agree. People don't trust the police to call them to intervene when something like that is going on. People themselves don't want to intervene because we were taught that's their business. You don't get into that. Let them handle that. So who's really helping? Who's really protecting? Who's really intervening? No one. People are fending for themselves by fighting, instead of having conflict resolution skills and anger management skills.
Okay. I wanted to play a little bit of the video of Zach Stacy and I'm not sure if it's his fiance or wife. I'm not sure, but I'm going to play it.
It's his ex-girlfriend.
Oh, his ex-girlfriend. Okay. And I want you all to listen to what happens right after the physical violence and what he says. And I want you to listen to what she says as well. And then I want us to talk about that. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So this is it was hard for me to watch, y'all, but I'm going to go ahead and play this. That's just a little disclaimer. It's a little difficult to watch.
Listen. You think that was okay? Listen. Now I do not. Please. 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 You thought that was okay? And then you're going to ruin a relationship and talking about I'm destructive? Listen, bitch. I'm like this, listen.
All right. So I wanted to play that. What did you all hear?
Okay, wait a minute. Before you play, did you play? It's important to know too. I don't know if you all have a chance to look at the whole thing. As he's walking out the door, he says, "I love you" to his baby, while his baby is screaming and crying. Now go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, what I wanted to say regarding it, and you asked, what can be done about it, right? I think that what I've been seeing most of the time is that we put a lot of focus on the victims, right? To the point where I feel like, to LaKanya's point, it's not really doing anything. It's like we're putting the onus on the victim. We putting the energy on the victim. We trying to figure out, why the victim did this, or how the victim stay or whatever. But I think the problem is that we don't put enough energy and effort into the perpetrator, right? The people who are being violent. Like, it's like, I feel like it's almost to the point where it kind of gets written off. Like, if somebody exhibits violent behavior or something like that, it's just like, throw them away, done, right? To the point where I think that contributes to environment where people don't want to address it or don't want to deal with it, because there really is no way to deal with it other than what? They're gonna go to jail, right? Is it really gonna be any mental support? Is it gonna be anything? When is the time where it's ever somebody sit down to try to investigate for that person? Like, why did you do that? Why are you doing that? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, even with that situation, like, that's some severe, like, the victim, like, that's horrible. Like, that's horrible. But I feel like people who are mentally stable don't behave that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, what is going on? You know, like, when are we also going to address it? Because you're not going to stop domestic violence by putting all of the responsibility or the attention on victims. Like, you're just not, you know, like you have to do something about, like you said, what is bringing on the behavior, and how do we address that behavior? How do we stop that behavior? And it's not going to be telling the person who's the victim of it to be like, because you got to do this and you got to do it. Well, you know, it's like, that's not going to work.
And that's why I wanted you all to pay attention to what they said. After he swung her across the room, he went into blaming her, and he put himself in the shoes of the victim, or painting himself as a victim. Like, how dare you do this? How dare you say I'm destructive? Like, and then what did she do? What did she do? She felt the need to explain. Oh no, I didn't do that. That's not me. I didn't mean any harm. And I think that happens a lot. At least I've seen that happen. I just think about his mental state. It made me wonder, well, what has happened in his life? What is he going through? And what is going on in his mind that he thinks he can throw somebody across the room in front of their child, and there's justification for that, So I agree with you. Like, we can't focus on the victim. We can't
Well, also too, I mean, I think it's not. I mean, I'm not a clinician, but this is not a new thing. I mean, and not just exclusive to the Black community. There was a movie, The Burning Bed. That's a movie from 1970 something, based on a true story. This woman was getting beaten daily, and went to the police, and they couldn't do anything because technically it wasn't against the law. And every time he would beat her, he would say, "You made me do this." This is not new. This is not new. And I'm sorry, I will not believe that every person, I'm not going to say man, but every person that engages in this type of conduct has a mental issue. I'm not going to do that. They have control issues, controlling their emotions. Definitely, that's an issue. But I am not inclined to believe, because a person that did this to my arm when he was stomping my mother in the face with a boot, he was not mentally ill. He was not mentally ill. And he beat my mom for 7 years. He wasn't, but he was controlling. And it goes back to, again, feelings of inadequacy, no doubt, because why would you need to feel like you need to inflict that type of pain and control over someone if you are self-actualized yourself? But he did not have a psychological diagnosis. So it is clearly, and I have to say, this is something we mess ourselves up, because I'm digressing, but I really want to say this because
Can you all hear her?
Okay. You talk about the bystanders, but I was one of them. I had a friend a really good friend of mine, and she was in a intimate partner domestic situation, and I don't think he ever put his hands on her. Well, she didn't admit, but he was living with her in her house, and I kept saying, "Get that out your house," and I was going off. And she said, "Terry, it's just not that easy." I'm like, "What the hell you mean it's not that easy? Get that." I mean, I was going off. I said, "Call the police. I said, he ain't got no job. Get that MF out of." She kept saying, "Terry, you don't understand. It's not that easy." And she was afraid in her own house. When the situation happened with me, I called her and I said I was sorry. Because I knew then what she was experiencing, because I called the police to get that person out of my house and couldn't get him out. I was now scared in my own house to do anything. So it's easy to say what they should do when you ain't in it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too, is that it shows that a lot of times when someone is murdered is when they actually try to leave. Like that's when the violence escalates to that level. So like you say, it's real easy to be like, just leave. But what is the protection? Like
right.
But and that's why I say I feel we do need to put more focus on the perpetrator, not from the perspective to like make them the victim in the situation, but from the perspective of that's really they don't, because if they really want to do something, they're gonna do it. Like having a piece of paper or a restraining order or whatever, that's going to do nothing unless you can get that person to not be that type of person. It's like that's like the other, like what is the victim gonna do? Go run and be a hide? Or like it, if that person really wants to get to them or do something to them, then they're gonna find a way. And like a lot of times that's exactly what happens. And it's when they leave a lot of times, which is a lot of reason why some people stay, because the violence escalates when they leave or when they try to move on or whatever. That's why I say I feel like the behavior in the person needs to be addressed, because you can't like, and really like law enforcement and different things like that, their hands are tied with a lot of those situations, because sometimes maybe they haven't actually done the thing yet. So then what are they arresting them for? You know, like, so it's so I feel like you got to address that in order to really have an impact. You know what I mean? Because you can't.
Yeah.
It's
And let me point this out too. Even as a clinician, and I want everybody to hear this, because Miss TJ, I've seen that movie time and time again. I've actually used that movie to point out to people that we need to remember that legislation on domestic violence and laws and criminal code for domestic violence did not really come into play until late 70s, early 80s. Okay, I'm gonna say that one more time, because that wasn't that long ago. Late 70s, early 80s. Now you think about what was happening before then. We talking about.
I graduated from high school in 85.
There you go. I'm 40 years old. I was born in 81. So the backing by the law has not been this not a brand new thing. And this is why I tell people, this is why I advocate so hard for people to know their local representatives and to vote in local elections, and stop always debating about national elections and giving, being a mouthpiece for national, when really it's your local elections that affect these types of laws. There are people in your state that represent your district that know that domestic violence is an issue. Okay. Domestic violence went up during the pandemic. That's something that we haven't really been talking about. It went up. It went really up. Okay. Substance abuse went really up during the pandemic.
Yep.
This is why we need to go vote, because we got these same people sitting in these same seats and they see the numbers and the news just like we do, but nobody's writing new legislation to say, hey, we need to go back and review criminal code, X, Y, and Z that was created 40 years ago, because obviously it's not protecting these women who are being killed by these exes and these, or these women who are terrorizing these men's lives, doing background checks and having them fired from their job, and all of these things, all these different types of abuse. being someone who has had to do training with a lot of judges and a lot of DAs and educating them on mental health and how they need to be more proactive with, stricter sentences for perpetrators, but also realizing that mental illness is a real thing and it's not just something to get somebody off from what they're doing.
Right.
They are not aware enough of the fact that laws that are centered around domestic violence have not been around that long. So if the law is only 40 years old and they only put a law there for just basic protection, think about what I said earlier about the different types of abuse and how more educated we are on how domestic violence starts and different types of domestic violence. It's time to change the law. It's been 40 some years. It's time to change the law. And I'm kind of like with Cannon, even though, I am a clinician, I do believe that some of this is psychological, some of this is, some mental illness. LaConya can kind of co-sign with me on that, with some emotional disturbances someone might be experiencing. It does not mean that they are exempt from experiencing consequences for this behavior.
Right.
Case in point, South Georgia, here this week in Valdosta, Georgia, 17-year-old girl loses her life. Ask me why. Mom went down to the police station, filed different things about ex-boyfriend bothering said young lady. Law enforcement did not intervene. What does he do? Catch her by herself, catch her in a moment, kills her.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but we gotta bring when we talk about voting and legislation and representation, we got to start holding our officials accountable. There should be no law regarding domestic violence and protecting us as humans that we're not reviewing on a more regular basis. And the only way they're going to review it is if we get out to the polls and we vote, we write these people, we email these people, we aggravate them and tell them that I still don't feel protected. It's their job to review these laws. That's what we send them up the hill for. So I just wanted to point that out.
I have a question, Ms. Jovo, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
When I was learning about when I was RA, they teach you about all type of abuse. So you're right, it's not just physical, but most of them have a cycle. So where would like the government fit in that cycle? Because sometimes they're good, and then the cycle starts up again, and they're not. So where would the legislation fit in? This isn't like a dig or anything. Now I'm just curious, like where would legislation come in at?
A lot of times when someone is, for instance, like with some of the population that I work with, they're slapped with the fine and they're told to take classes or to see a clinician.
Yep.
Did you hear me say imprisonment? Did you hear me say jail time? You didn't hear me say those things, because we live in a system where we do have some people who are sitting, on benches and they're representing folks and they've been in that hot seat. So in their mind, they're thinking, oh, they're like me, and he did all of this, or she did all of this. This is a first offense. Okay, let's get them off with a warning. They're gonna pay restitution, and then they're gonna take these 6 to 12 classes with Miss Mosley or whatever, and then go on about their business. Meanwhile, there's funding that's needed to have psychologicals done on these folks, evaluations, mental health evaluations, which LaConya can also co-sign with me on that. They're not always free and they're not cheap. So it's like, okay, let's get some money instead of giving you a raise, Mr. Congressman or House of Representative person. Instead of giving you a raise for the next 2 years, let's push some of this money aside so we can start evaluating some of these people and really learning about their pattern of behavior and do kind of what Ms. TJ was saying before. Let's separate criminal addictive thinking and behavior from, okay, this person has a mental health disorder and the disturbance, because there's a difference. There's a difference. So we need money and funding pushed towards that, not towards, somebody's salary for the next 2 years. So I think that's where it comes from, because you can see all these warning signs with this person. And I'm just stating my opinion, if he's been dragging this girl or she's saying now that there's been some verbal stuff, all these different signs are coming out, he needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law so he can understand that this is nothing to play with, because you could kill her. You can hurt her permanently. or she can hurt him, or she can ruin his life permanently. You know. So that's kind of when I see the connect with the law. We need funding, we need resources, so we could attack this thing full throttle.
We have a caller. I do want to hear from everyone else on the panel, but I also want us to talk about it when the woman is the perpetrator. Me personally, I think domestic violence is domestic violence. It's all horrible and it's all bad, and it's hurtful, it's destructive to the victim, and it's destructive to people around the victim, whether it be their children or even their parents, people who know them. Like, I knew somebody who was experiencing domestic violence and it hurt me. It's just destructive regardless of who the perpetrator is, whether the perpetrator is male or female. But I want to explore if there are some differences in the reasons for why it happens or why it continues to happen based off of whether or not the perpetrator is male or female. I want to talk about that a little bit, but I have a caller on the phone. It's Cameron. Hey, Cameron. Everybody, let's welcome Cameron.
Hey, Cameron.
Hey, Cameron.
Hey.
Cameron.
Candace brother here. Yeah, this is a hell of a topic y'all got going on. Okay. I want to start, I think, where you just left off at, Ashley. Basically, I think a lot of times it's going to be really hard trying to address this when men are on the receiving end of this, because for one, you got society, which is the biggest part that plays a role in, like, nigga, get your soft ass out of here. Like, your girl did what? You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be that energy just as a foundation, just because that's the way it is in society. So there's that. And then, like I mentioned, like in the comment, it's not always want to answer the phone. Okay, I'm going to slash your tires. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like there's that type of stuff that happens as well. But me, I'm also a bystander. And to TJ Rudolph, I didn't know level of trauma bonding, but I also experienced like watching my mom at like 3 years old, like that going on, almost mirroring what you described. So I don't even want to describe it again. But that's something that I also have to, manage and deal with as a male. And it's just crazy, like trying to navigate like that part of it. I think a really good way of addressing it, especially with the new generation coming in, is just being like more, having more insight on like their relationships, having more insight on like, like what they got going on, instead of it being like kind of that energy where, oh, I got my own stuff to worry about. I can't worry about that, because that can play a role too. And have a situation where you got a girl who, is getting caught by herself and something like that happens.
Okay. Thank you. Any responses to Cameron? Yeah, thank you, Cameron. I'm happy.
Well, Cameron, this is TJ, and I understand, sweetheart. And this happened with my mom so many years ago, but it leaves an indelible imprint on your life that you take with you. And again, I think that's one of the things too that, that's important for us to go to therapy and talk those things out, because, I think that's why maybe that was one of the reasons it took me so long to find the right guy, because again, I was so dead set on never finding myself in the same situation with my mother. And I was so good at up until I wasn't. So, but had I, gone through and did the necessary therapy to kind of unpack that, maybe I would have understood a little bit better. So if you haven't done so, I would encourage you to do so. Because again, we take it with us, we take it with us. And as far as a male being abused, I also have a relative gosh, I mean, you should probably say, what kind of family she got? But I had a male relative that at one point that was his significant other was wailing on him, and I think sometimes women, they do that because they know that the man is not going to hit them back,
Yeah.
and so, and again, being a bystander, I wanted to kick her ass.
Mhm.
I was on my way. So, but again, part of the reason why some people don't get involved is because they'll say, well, we'll get involved, and then you're going to end up back with them anyway.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, I love my mom, and regrettably, she did go back to that person for many years,
Mhm.
So, but again, far as men are concerned, men don't call the police because, kind of like you said, Cameron, them are like, really, ruck up, dude, ruck up. But it's not, women can hurt men bad too, really bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that was the case that just happened was it in Georgia last week with the woman that shot her husband and then killed herself?
Mhm.
Come on now.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
wanted to read this that I got from an article online from ebony.com. And I mean, I could put it to words myself, but they do it very well. So I just want to read it. It says, abuse is not gender specific. Big men, strong men, Black men, you would never think are victims too. Female abusers use all kinds of threats and have various types of leverage, such as pretending to be abused by their mate, lying to the police, threatening to take away a man's children, and crying wolf when he tries to protect himself or restrains her. So that's
Mhm.
I think a lot of that is one reason why abuse can continue to happen against, Black men,
Mhm.
because you do have women out there who are abusing the fact that they are women and a
I
police.
have a
Mhm.
neighbor right next door. She's not Black.
Yeah. And yeah.
But what I'm saying, she has called the police several times on her boyfriend, and she's been the one, but
Yeah.
she will initiate and she will beat him and then call the police and say he did it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
She's even gone as far as to try to hurt herself and blame it on him. It is bananas. I'm just saying.
Mm.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree. All right.
Mhm.
So Cameron, did you have any last words?
I don't, because this is like a lot that y'all talking about. So I'm gonna just leave it at there. But yeah, nice
Okay.
talking to y'all.
Well, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for being a supporter. Thank you for calling in. And don't forget to share our channel and let other people know about us.
Mhm. Mhm.
All righty.
And
All
happy
right.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Oh, happy Thanksgiving to you too.
Thanksgiving. Mhm.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.
All right, we did have another caller calling in. I'll give them a chance to call back later. But I do want to hear from some of the guys on the panel. You guys have been kind of quiet. I know we've been doing a lot of the talking. So can you all chime in?
Well, I can talk about. I want to share my experience as a bystander. I think Ms. Jovo said that's like one of the main things that's lead to domestic violence. And when I was younger, I'm maybe about 21, 22, I was living with a close friend. I mean, a real close friend, like a brother. Still is my brother. And um, his girl was living with us and everything. And they used to get into these big arguments, these big fights. And it was so real physical. And I never did anything, never said nothing. I just stayed out of it. It wasn't my business. That's what I was thinking in my head. Like, it ain't my business, whatever. She's still staying with him. That's on her. And so over the years, they always been like violent, get to the point where he was just wailing on her and stuff like that. And they broke up, whatever. And like over the years, I'm older now. I've grown. I've started realizing, my wrongs and my rights and stuff like that. So about a couple of years ago, I reached out to her, because I'm still in contact with her, and I had to apologize to her, like, and let her know, like, I should have said something. I should have done something. I didn't have to like just sit back. And I never used to tell her like, oh, it's your fault or nothing like that, but I just never did nothing, you know. And I just had to apologize because I just felt kind of guilty and kind of bad for just sitting there and not doing anything because, you know, like I said, I got older now. And my cousins, I got a lot of female cousins, and they've called me. I have to go and whoop up on some guys that was touching them and stuff like that. And, you know, and that's just what I've grown to do. And so I apologize to her and stuff like that. I had to get that off my chest. But I do know that being a bystander perpetuates the situation because you're giving that person that especially if it's a close friend, like you're not really holding them accountable to doing it. And if no one is doing that, they're going to think it's okay. They're going to, and there's no consequences. There's no, not even like as far as the police and law enforcement. It's just consequences as far as how I perceive you and how I look at you now. Like, bro, why are you doing this? Like, you just lost a lot of respect for me. And that person didn't even get that vibe from me. They just went on like, okay, I still got these perfect relationships with everybody, even though I'm just this big woman beater and this and that. And I think as a bystander, we just giving them that total confidence and that ability to think they can do whatever they want to do. And I think if we're doing that, they go out to the real world. That's when they gonna have a rude awakening. You know what I'm saying? I think if you're close to someone that's doing it, I would just tell you it is your business. You know. And that was my take on like it's not my business, but in actuality, it was my business. That's a black woman. That he's my brother. By me stepping in, I was looking out for both of them, and I didn't look out for neither one of them. You know, I didn't check him on it. I didn't like make him aware of, hey, bro, you doing wrong, and I didn't even help her, and she didn't have no one to, you know, she felt like she was by herself or unprotected, whatever the case was. I just was, you know, just watch both of them just go down the spiral, you know.
I like that. We sometimes don't talk about the perspective of the bystander, of the person who is doing the violence or perpetrating the violence. I was actually thinking about that even before you started talking because, you know, fortunately, I've never seen anyone in my family be abused, right? And I mean, I had a friend who I've known women who have experienced abuse, but they only told me about it, right? I never had to witness it being done to someone that I was close to me, but I have seen someone close to me be the perpetrator. And that's rough. You know, I was a kid at the time, but I saw someone that I love dearly to this day, you know, be physically abusive to someone else. And so that's an interesting perspective to add, you know, and to talk about like, what do we do? What can we do? You know, and then there's always an element of your own safety. You know, how much should you insert yourself into someone else's affairs? When does it become too dangerous for you to do that? So thank you, Darn. I appreciate that. Rashad, did you want to chime in?
Sure, yeah. Again, I don't have too much to add, and unfortunately, I just don't, you know, just not really knowledgeable that much on the situation, like, you know, statistics wise. But, you know, Cannon, what you said earlier, I agree a lot with you. Really just taking the preventative measures, kind of just understanding, like we were saying, the mental health, the emotional health aspects, you know, just again with the whole, and you too, Javonda, like really, you know, focusing. Of course, we have to make punitive measures towards it, but we also have to take preventative measures from those things to happen. And one thing you said too, Javonda, that stood out to me, like that domestic abuse have increased during COVID. So, you know, it makes me wonder too, like, you know, clearly there's a factor there, you know, it being more prevalent in the African-American community. I don't believe it's just, you know, because we're Black, it's more prevalent with us. There's other factors determining it. You know, with COVID, I'm thinking maybe, you know, of course, stress-related problems and just other external factors that, again, I'm not very knowledgeable on, but those are just things that we need to, you know, look at and really, you know, boil down to working on and healing and correcting and preventing, again, from this to happen, and not really just focus on punishing.
Uh-oh, I think he froze. All right. Okay, I think he froze up on us. I'll let him finish later, but we do have a caller. We have Penn Wright's Mental. Did I say that correctly?
Right, mentality. Just pretend whatever y'all want to call it. What up, though?
Hey.
And you know what? Man, we got a wide range of topics. Just to speak on, I guess, one part of it. As far as when it comes down to being on the receiving end of domestic violence, I think our people, we have been okay with one way domestic violence. And what I mean is, because we teach our young boys, you don't put your hands on no girls. And they taught us that religiously as we were coming up. But for whatever reason, they were against telling the young girls, don't put your hands on the man. You see what I'm saying? They say, no matter what you do, you a man, you walk away. And these particular teachers, obviously, when you look at how society is, you see a lot of videos where a chick would be just wailing on the dude. Because, yes, she knows that there is no consequence, that she hasn't been taught, hey, I'm not supposed to do that. You see what I'm saying? And you can't just hit somebody and then not expect them to defend themselves, especially after you teach somebody from a child growing up, if somebody hits you, defend themselves. And then all of a sudden they're supposed to just abort that, subconsciously. And so that, I like to say, we teach the boys discipline on that, but we don't never teach the girls the discipline. And they think it's cute, and they think it's okay, and they find it all right to be hitting on the dude, and they will antagonize the dude and all these different things, and it's not to try to say, hey, we're going to blame the victim or whatever. Well, we can still call it out for what is real. Mm-hmm. These verbal things start domestic violence too. Wars start verbally first anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's just my take on it. I think we have to have deal with domestic violence and then we look at it like, why is this shit happening? But that's just my outlook on that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that very much. All right.
Yeah.
Stay tuned and call back in if you have something else to add to the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
All right. All right. So I know Mrs. Understanding.
I think she muted. I had a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My
question was, from my perspective, whenever I meet, I guess couples that are engaging in domestic abuse, it could be the girl being, verbally abusive, the guy being physically abusive, whatever the case may be. What do you guys do from, I guess, professional standpoint? Because when I encounter them, it seems like they like it, and I'm if you like it, I love it. I'm one of those people, but when it comes to abuse, I can't, be a bystander for that kind of thing. So I'll tell both of them, that's abuse. That's abuse, right? When she threw your plate out your hand, that was abuse. When you stormed over to her and charged and stood over her, that was abuse.
Right.
That. But if neither one of them think it's a problem, then I guess what is the next step? Because as a bystander, am I supposed to call the police on y'all, even though y'all not physically fighting in front of me? Because I've never seen people physically attack each other in front of me, just the things that tend to lead up to, the violence. But, do I call the police when somebody's plate is slapped out their hand? What is the step for the bystander if the people involved are not, if they're not uncomfortable?
It's never a problem until someone gets hurt. So, until someone gets hurt, it was just a big argument. They be
kissing with black guys, so I don't think the whole hurt thing. I don't know.
Well, I LaKanya, this is a good one for you because you see this working with couples and working within relationships. So,
I think the previous caller mentioned trauma bonding. And it's a very real thing. And so this idea where neither person thinks it's a big problem because they've connected over this. They've connected over the trauma together. It connects them and keeps them together. So when you hear people say, why couldn't you stay with somebody doing this? It's our thing. You'll hear people say, like, that's just our thing. That's just how we handle. That's just how we talk to each other. That's how I show love. I've had people say, I know my person loves me because they'll push me around. I had somebody push someone in the bushes and they were like, but they love me. No, that's not love. So like helping people be more self-aware, I think, as a bystander, just having a conversation with them repeatedly, letting them know that you're concerned. This doesn't seem okay. This is a dangerous situation. This can become fatal, you know. Because, and you're right, because if you were to call the police, there's a chance they might stay together. There's a chance they won't press charges. And then it's you looking like, the bad person, for calling the police. So I would encourage you to have conversations with the person, and express to them like your concern.
Well, to be fair, my husband said I got to save the world complex, and normally he just be like, "You need to leave people alone." So that's how it typically ends, But in my heart, I'm like, "Oh my God, they need this, help." But of course, normally once you hear about it, it's like, "Oh, okay, well, those not gonna be your new friends no more."
And Raven sometimes, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lakanya.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I came from that standpoint too, that I'm not going to create a problem for you. If you don't see something as a problem, then it's not a problem. But when it comes down to safety, I feel like I have to say something. Do no harm.
And we have to be assertive too. Like I think sometimes, we use humor and, we use certain things as as mechanisms to like get it out the easy way. And sometimes you just got to say what needs to be said assertively, that, hey, I see in front of me, my observation is, you're knocking his plate out of his hand. Or, I just had this conversation with an associate a couple of weeks ago. I explained to her, I see you using profanity and losing your temper a lot when you are communicating your needs to this guy that she's dating. How is that benefiting you, and how is that benefiting him? Because what I see is abuse. That's my observation. What I see is abuse. And she was taken aback when I said abuse, because when you start using those words, those are some strong allegations. But you have to set boundaries and and assert to people that these are not just, we can't minimize this behavior. We can't minimize it. We have to be, overt and really just being assertive and saying what we're observing. Sometimes that's just enough to get somebody's attention and make them aware, okay, I see what you're saying, and setting boundaries, with how we're communicating what we're seeing. And then that might influence them to start setting some boundaries and start really getting some help. That light bulb might go off for them.
Because as we've mentioned earlier, it's hard to see it when you're in it. If you're inside of the picture, you can't see the whole thing. You don't recognize everything that's going on. But when somebody on the outside, that's why therapy is so important. Because it's somebody on the outside, looking at the whole situation and seeing it for what it really is from the outside looking in. And of course, we don't know everything that's going on inside, but you don't know either because you're in it, So it's helpful. But now the stuck point is, like Ms. TJ said earlier, sometimes you don't want to hear it from other people. You're just not ready to receive that information.
Yeah. Thank you.
We can't make people change.
Yeah. That makes me think about, just, for instance, a lot of my students have very troubling ideas of what's like okay and what's not. Like, no, there are some things that are just plain abusive, and mean. And I think we do have to probably check some of those ways of thinking, as children are younger, because they may start to manifest in these types of ways as they get older. It's just a wonder. But I want to move on to the next.
Hold on, I just wanted to answer a question Rashad asked about the why the rates went up for COVID and stuff like that. I think we take for granted how much those outlets meant to our sanity, right? How people couldn't go to the gyms, go out bowling, go places they like to go, to bars, get their drink, and they have to be around that person during aggravating times more, stuff like that. So I think that's a big reason why the rate in domestic violence went up during COVID, because those outlets mean a lot. It might not look like it's something, but just getting that 30-minute workout in the gym can soothe you. Just going, shopping can soothe you. Going to get a bite to eat, going to get that drink can soothe you. And if you don't get that, some people might go crazy. They get home and then they spouse is talking crazy to them, and then they probably just lost it. So that every day, when their life changed up so drastically during COVID, it changed them mentally too. It just didn't change like a habit of I want to go here. Everybody's mental changed during COVID. Everybody, it's no way to shake it. Like everybody thought differently. Everybody started doing things differently. Just waking up in the morning, oh, I forgot my mask. It's things that we had to redo, adjust to in our head that just kind of threw us off. And if you didn't adjust well, and you didn't have that partner that you really had a close relationship with in the first place, then of course things was going to get a little crazy. So I think that's why the rates. I'm not an expert, but I think that's why the rates went up a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much. We're going to go ahead and segue to this next conversation. I am super excited about this. It is, how is parenting today different from generations ago? What needed to change and what should we have kept the same? Who wants to chime in first? Let's try to, it's like 9:30, so
Okay.
not to go
I'll kick it off. Okay. I was thinking about this a lot, and I think that we have to really understand that things are different from generation to generation as far as external factors. So it's always gonna affect things when it comes to parenting and stuff like that. And I think that the biggest thing that we are dealing with right now is that parenting is a lot harder in this generation than it was in previous generations. And I think that it has a lot to do with, we have so many more things to manage as parents, things that didn't exist before. Like when you have the social media and you have like just all of these different factors, like TV time and screen time, and just the whole way that we interact, and the whole way that we are out here as parents right now just gives us a lot more on our plate. I think that we spend more time with our kids than they did in previous generations. I will say that. I think that everything, like I said before, and I say this a million times, everything comes with a double-edged sword. So where you have positives, you also get, I think, negatives sometimes. And I think one of the things is that we got very like overprotective with our kids. We are very, each generation wants to overcorrect or wants to correct for what they feel could have been better or what needed to change in their previous generation. And sometimes I think that we do overcorrect. I think that we, spoil our kids too much these days. I feel like they don't necessarily have a lot of the types of adversities that we had or our grandparents dealt with. So I feel like a lot of times it's almost like manufactured adversity. Like they have too much, you know what I mean? They just have too much at their disposal. And it's so difficult because we can't pull from what our parents had to apply it to these times because it's just so drastically different. So we kind of just really playing it super by ear. I feel like, we always say like there's no manual, because it's not. It just doesn't exist. So I feel like we just doing the best that we can do. And I always say one thing that you can be sure of, even with your best intentions as a parent, you're gonna jack them up some. You're gonna jack them up. Just accept it and do the best that you can. But these external factors, I think that they having the biggest impact on these kids these days, and it's really difficult to manage that.
Okay. All right. Anyone else who wants to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll go next. One thing that, I'm more like old school in the belief of how to do things. And I would say like one big factor that I feel like what our generation does, and it kind of started like, when I was younger. So like early 90s, it's like the whole like medication thing and the ADD, ADHD and everything, that was kind of newer, in the 90s. And I feel like, again, I'm not an expert in this at all, but I feel like, when it comes to how we parent and how we look at kids being, kids, a little hyper and stuff like that, like we're so quick to like want to medicate them, put them on medicine. And I know that's part of like the whole pharmaceutical initiative too. And, schools getting extra funding if kids are diagnosed as ADHD. And, this is a side issue, like, they diagnose Black kids, unproportionately compared to other kids with that stuff. So there's a financial incentive behind it as well. But I feel like, sometimes like instead of, I think kind of just going back to like the more stricter way of parenting versus like, oh, let me put you on medicine, is I think that's better, because I'm not sure if putting kids on medicine is always the best solution. And even if a kid's a little more hyper than normal, I mean, there's the difference between a hyper kid versus an uncontrollable kid. Sometimes kids just need like some, tougher discipline than males. So I'm not saying beat them or nothing like that, but just more discipline. But a lot of times, like, people are quick to put them on medication. And I would say another issue, well, not an issue, but just a factor that, we as parents in our generation face is, like the technology that kids have. And, kids, 2-year-olds, on tablets, watching YouTube videos, knowing all that, and just kind of having that access. It's like everybody, kids have access to all information. This can be a good thing or a bad thing. But I think, we as parents, use that sometimes too, to like almost as a babysitter at times, and maybe less personal time bonding with kids and stuff like that, and kind of just giving them electronics. And also wondering too, to me this goes along with like the ADD ADHD thing too, like with kids growing up, because I think about little kids watching just TikTok and YouTube videos, and kind of just having that instant gratification thing that social media does to us. Most of us didn't grow up as little kids with that, but like I would only imagine like a kid being born into that world and the effect it could have on their attention span. Like if everything is so just like quick. So when they're in like schools or other situations and they have to sit and concentrate and focus, I feel like that's going to be a challenge as our younger kids now grow up and see the effects on that. I think there's going to be a lot of adjusting in the world, but even as parents, it's like we have to teach our kids to adjust from that instant gratification, social media, electronic things that we have. So that's just my thoughts on there.
Okay, thank you. I certainly understand about that attention span. Whew. And I think that kind of speaks to what Cannon was saying about new challenges. Now kids have so much at their fingertips, so you have to monitor that. TJ, what do you think? What do you think should have been? What do you think we should have held on to, and what do you think should have changed about parenting, if anything?
Well, I was just on a podcast earlier today, actually talking about children. Do we give our kids too much? As a matter of fact, earlier today, and I said it depends. I definitely think that in our effort, and again, I'm a Generation Xer, so I'm older than all y'all. In an effort to give my daughter things and opportunities that I didn't have, and her father as well, because we both grew up poor, and she is our only child together, and she's our only child, period. So we gave her a lot of stuff. But we just didn't give her a lot of stuff. We had rules. And she knew that with the rules, certain things would be taken away from her. So she was spoiled or is spoiled or whatever. But again, it wasn't. But and I use the example like this. I never ever had a problem doing or giving my daughter things because, for one, she always made good grades. She was never in trouble. And she knew that I had rules. She knew that if I had to get called to the school for anything other than the honor roll, it was going to be a situation. So I didn't have, we didn't have any of those issues. But the downside of it was that I put some unintended pressure on her. She thought she had to be perfect. But, but I think the thing that, I don't know, this is going to sound rant, but I don't care. Fear goes a long way. And she was afraid of me, and I was okay with it.
Healthy fear.
I was okay. No, I was okay with it. And it got her to do what I needed her to do. and she knew that her mom wasn't playing, and she knew her dad was. And it's the interesting thing, kids they will interact with their mothers different than their fathers, because there were times I did have to spank her because she's just like me. She's a twin too, Cannon. She's a gym too. So, it's, I didn't know. So sometimes, she was trying to see how, so I'd have to kind of tap her a little bit, but her father never did. His voice was enough, but I had to, get with her sometimes. So again, it just depends on the child. So I think fear goes a long way, and I was okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And because she never knew when I was going to show up, and I showed up even in high school, so I was good with that. So a little fear goes a long way, and I never was going to kill it, but it didn't bother me that she thought I might.
But we are the
Yeah.
first or second generation where our kids are encouraged to call the police on us, so that's a little different.
Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah. Well, now what I see a lot of as an educator is that kids they fear their parents, but the behaviors don't change all the time, because what happens is now we have a lot of parents who can talk the talk, but they're not walking the walk. Like, you can come up to school and act a whole fool, but when you're at home, your kids are still going to get everything that you said they wouldn't get. And even if you take it away for a while, they pretty much know this is like a game. It's a routine. Like, my mama gonna cuss me out, but after a while it's gonna be all right. And then, I just gotta listen to her fuss. But I'm seeing her still act a fool. I'm still seeing her do all these things she's telling me not to do, or I see my dad doing it. So it must be all right. So I think that, I like rules. I like what you were saying, but I think what probably made the difference with your daughter is that, you probably didn't just have rules. You probably had, though you probably weren't perfect. No parent is perfect. You probably had, what I find is that the morals are not being passed on, and then now, back in the day, it was do as I say, not as I do. But here's the thing, parents back in the day, though they were not perfect, it's like they were still good, better examples than what we have today. In general.
Well, I agree, because they did their dirt, and it was because they did do their dirt, but more often than not, it wasn't out and off.
Yeah,
more often than not.
And I think it depends on the demographic. I gotta say that, my perspective is a little different because of the demographic that I teach in. I know some wonderful parents, right? And I know some parents who are instilling some wonderful examples to their children, right? And their kids still mess up sometimes. That's normal. That's life. But I'm seeing kids in very dysfunctional homes. So it's like they are doing what they see their parents do,
It's generational cycles, though. That's what I mean. Like, I guarantee you that ain't the first generation of the shenanigans.
Exactly, which is why I think the one thing that we needed to change about parenting was the fact that do as I say and not as I do type of attitude. That I don't think works for us, because just a lot.
Well, this generation, I mean, millennials, again, I think the shift in parenting began to change during the millennial generation, in my opinion, because we started to give children more of a voice to be able to express themselves, and then got mad when they started to express themselves. Because I know I did. I'm like, excuse me, who you think you're talking to? So that's when it began. And then now I can't even imagine what
Well, I think we have to look at society as a whole. If you think about it, as humans, across societies, across the world, we've been becoming more egalitarian in our efforts. Right? We trying to get rid of hierarchies. Like, even if you think about in business, at jobs and things like that, things are not as hierarchical as they used to be. Like, oh, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, I lord over you, or whatever. It's like when we think about trying to address disadvantaged people and trying to basically like TJ said, give voice to people who haven't had a voice or who's been historically subjugated. I'll put it that way. It's like I feel like that's also applying to our children, and I don't think it's supposed to be. You know, where it's like I say, it's like that's why I say when it comes into play, like you do have where you want to protect the kids, right, and things like that. But I think that there does need to be a clear cut boss and when it comes to children, like that's just how that's supposed to work. But I feel like what we're seeing now, as I stated, like this is like they and it's for their safety and stuff like that, I understand. But still, it's like if your kids can call the police on you because you disciplining them or whatever, then that makes it a lot more difficult in your own house to have those, rules and things in your home. When your kid go like, you can't tell me, I'll call the police. What? Then it's like, what do you do with the kid, right? You like, you get out, whatever. And so it's just like, I think that's the double-edged sword of it, because we're trying to be more fair.
Okay.
Well, I told Danielle to call. Well, she called them, and I said, okay. And when they got there, I said, now you can take her, and she needs to decide if she likes it, And I'm like, she's a very spoiled child, and I think she's going to understand really quickly that the life that she has here is much better than the life she's going to have there. But the things one of the things that we should held on, in my opinion, that not as many parents do. I really wish we had more involvement with the educators, because it bothers me. I'll give you an example. Even though I didn't grow up with my dad, we had parental figures in school that were like our surrogate parents or surrogate dads or whatever. And if our principal called our moms or whatever, they could have, our moms would just say, well, what you need to handle, Terry. But now if a teacher calls a parent, well, what did you do to him?
Yes.
That's a problem for me.
Yeah.
That's a problem for me. Because I was talking to B Finesse earlier, and I was saying, when people know their children, and like you said, even the good children got their issues, and I had a good kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when a teacher says your child is doing this, and you automatically say, my child would never do this, do you really know your child? Because when Miss Senora Graham started telling me what my daughter was doing, I believed it because I know what she would do in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't automatically take my daughter's side, because children are manipulative.
And
that's one of the things that has changed that should not have changed.
Yeah.
There should be a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
and there is no balance.
I do agree with that. It's very one-sided now. It used to be very one-sided back in the day. A parent used to just tell kids to do this and do that, and with no questions asked, even wrong or right. It's just do this, And I think kids do need a voice, even if they just want to ask why. Just tell them why, because they do need to have some type of understanding, because the parents is not the only people that the kids deal with, right? So the kids need to always understand why they're doing something and what's the outcome of it, and what's going on. And second, with the whole parenting thing, I was in a lot of situations like that when I was called to the school, and me and my child's mother, they would tell us what my son did, and she would instantly, that he don't do that. What did you do? And I just look like, yeah, he did it. And she like, why you supposed to be on his side? No, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Because I know he done it at the other school. This was what he does. So I'm not about to come in here and just automatically just save my child, because when you start doing that, you causing more damage than good, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think we do need to get out of that trusting everybody, because generations ago, I from what I hear, the neighbor could have whooped your kid or stuff like that, or could have intervened, and I know back in the day, them older generations was breeding a lot of molesters, and is very not is not good to have your kid thinking that they can trust everybody, right? Because you
Right.
just can't these days. You know, it's a lot of stuff
Mm-hmm.
coming out in the open, and social media is a great way to find out a lot of things about these perverts out here and stuff like that. So that's a good thing about social media, and it's just the trust in it. I think I'm glad that we got rid of that. Like, nah, you can't go down the street. I need to know who you talking to. I don't care that he live in our community. I don't care that this is Mr. Rob, and Mr. Rob is he gives away free food and coats. I still need to know about Mr. Rob. You know what I'm saying? Because Mr. Rob could be using that as a ploy to get little girls and little boys. You know what I'm saying? So I need to know this because that's what's going on. And it's just it's sad that we can't trust our neighbors like that. But at the same time, hey, it is what it is. Like I'm not about. I could never remember a time where one of my neighbors could whoop me. You know, but I know that was happening back in the day. But I just wasn't my mother wasn't just on there like, oh, I saw your son doing this and I gave him a whooping. No. You know what I mean?
Well, again, I'm a Gen Xer, and again, I grew up in the 70s, so everybody that lived on my street, my mother went to high school with. So, and my grandfather helped raise, so that the times were definitely different. Definitely different, but the one thing's different now, you don't even know your neighbors now. And I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that you discipline them, but to even speak to them is the problem that I find. Because when my daughter was in middle school and we were in Virginia, all the kids knew Miss Terry didn't play. I wasn't going to be touching you, but I would correct you. Now you can't even correct nobody's kids.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
I
seen
think
that.
I might be coming from a different perspective because I only work with children about 5 or 6 under. So all of this talk about beating children just kind of throws me for a loop because I've been working with kids for almost 10 years and I don't understand why you got to hit them. Like, if they don't understand why you hitting them, if they do understand, explain it to them. This concept, it just throws me because
Did
when
I
I have older
miss that?
grandparents come visit, I'm sorry.
Did I miss it? Did I say something? I missed that about
Yeah,
beating
I don't
kids?
think anybody's advocating for
Sorry,
necessarily
spanking, hitting, nevertheless, physically touching children. From my perspective, children I've worked with, I don't have to put hands on them, and they behave better than the children that are getting beat at the park. The kids that get stopped by their mother, the kids I tutor, I nanny, they behave better than those children. So obviously beating or putting your hands on children doesn't work. Not the way people think it does. I think it's important to teach children how to communicate because children don't say what they don't hear. Every child I've ever worked with, they've never come out of nowhere and called somebody out their name and said the B word, this, and that, because that's not what they hear. When they do talk bad to each other, is, why did you take that from me? That's not how I like to play, because that's how we communicate. I don't talk to them crazy. I don't do this and that. I'm not in nobody's face. Children will do what they see. So if your child is acting a particular way, it's because that's what they see. It could be from you, it could be from music, it could be from wherever you think, wherever it could be, but that isn't in a green light to put hands on them. So I don't because I saw children getting snatched up at school. I behaved better for them and I wasn't getting snatched up. I saw children getting beat with extension cords. They still ended up in prison. So the older generation, for whatever reason, assumes that putting hands on a child makes them behave, and that is not the case at all. At all. There are studies that show it actually leads to imprisonment. So, I mean, I'm coming from a different place because I tell all the parents I've ever worked with, I'm coming from a place of luxury. I'm not going to put any unnecessary adversaries on Black children because the world has enough of it already. Every morning we're having shrimp and grits. I deveined the shrimp before y'all got here. I chopped up your strawberries before you got here. I have light jazz playing in the background because I don't want you to experience any type of stress while we together. So I'm definitely not going to put hands on you. And I'm not, when parents tell me the same thing, did you try timeout? Did you try a meditation break? Did you count to 10? No, you just hit them. What are you teaching them? Whether you spank them, whether you hit them on the back of the hand, whether you grab an extension cord, whether you grabbed a ruler, there were 5, 6, 7 steps you could have taken before putting your hand on that child. That is what I've noticed the difference between the older generation and my generation. We have the patience. I get that back in the day y'all didn't, but we do, and that's not something we're going to be passing down to the next generation.
The most disturbing thing I've seen was a kid getting a whooping for wanting something in a store.
People will hit their children for being children, and it baffles me. Do you think 3-year-olds don't have tantrums? And then you hit them for like.
Okay, I understand. I understand this is passionate. Okay, but again, we talked about the origins of certain things. You do what you know. It's not always right, but you do what you know.
But we don't glorify it either and say, "Oh, go there and snatch her out of school." That's what. That's
I don't
not
think I said that. I don't think I said that.
You're right. It wasn't spoken about as if something we should not do. It seemed like it was a joking manner. Maybe that's just from my perspective, but it seemed like
it wasn't. I was very serious about what I said. When my daughter knew if I had to come up to the school and take off work about something that was other than the honor roll, it was going to be a situation.
You said she acted like you. You stated she acted like you. So why would you?
Precocious, yes. Precocious, absolutely.
Are you breaking up?
And I had to be dealt with.
Okay, well, I don't know what acting like you meant, but that's what I said precocious. That's why you put your hands on her. Okay. Nevertheless, my point stands. You said you spanked her because she started acting like
I did.
Okay, well, my point stands. There are 5, 6, 7 steps you could take before putting your hands on a child.
And 5, 6, 7 steps, you don't know if I took them or not. Do you? No, you don't.
Putting your hands on the child? Okay.
You don't know.
I'm just saying, it's from my perspective as a younger generation. Like I said, we had patience. Maybe the older generation did not.
I beg your pardon?
Maybe the older generation did not have the patience to actually sit down and problem solve with their children instead of beating them.
Maybe they didn't have the patience, and maybe they didn't have the knowledge.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I heard a lot, even with switching devices. What my daughter had a sleepover for her birthday, and she had a skate party, and she got a cell phone, and she just turned 10. And one of my husband's friends said, they called her name and said, "You're spoiled." And my daughter turned and she said, respectfully, and she used that word. She said, respectfully, she said, "I'm a privileged child who knows structure, routine, and consistency, and my mom disciplines me. I have consequences we have a motto, because I'm on a mission. Okay. Mm-hmm. We have a motto, we got a creed. I think a lot of times we focus on what these kids do wrong, and we don't draw enough of what they're actually doing right. It is nothing for me to walk around the house and say, Janae, I really think that you are super creative. We got this game, we'll play, and my husband old school. I'm old school. I grew up in the house with my grandmother. Now is almost 90. At the time I grew up, her mother was 106 when she died. And I grew up in the house. I spent 12 years with a great grandmother who grew up with grandparents and great grandparents that were slaves. That if you didn't do what you were told, you were beaten. And even she will come back and tell you, you need to talk to your kids. See, that's what I see now. I see a lot of everybody like to delegate and exercise authority. But I think for me, it's important for me, and I have to sometimes grab myself and say, did you have a conversation with Janae about what she did? We got to have these conversations. And sometimes we have what I call proactive conversations, meaning we have a conversation before a behavior, that I know was coming up with her age group or whatever, before it even exists. We're going to have a conversation about it. Because the only thing my grandmother taught me with spanking my behind was, let me find out a way to do it again
without getting caught,
without her finding out about it. And then she also taught me that I can tell her certain things, but I can't come talk to you about everything. Because if I say something, you're going to say it's disrespectful. Exactly. Yeah, right. I feared my grandmother. And that worked good for me in some ways, and that didn't work very well for me in some ways, especially as I got older, went off to college, went from home. She'll tell you now that she felt like she didn't know a lot about me as a 20s, in my 20s, because I was scared of telling anything, because off and on it was hit after hit, Right.
Spanking after spanking, beating after beating. So it's like, why would I tell you anything when I'm scared to death of you? You know,
Mm.
my daughter is a child that does not respond to corporal punishment very well. I can look her in the face and I can tell her that I'm disappointed in her behavior, and she's gonna burst into tears. But I built a rapport with her that's not, why you always doing that, or you're not supposed to do that. I build a rapport with her that says, let's talk about how that didn't work for you. Let's talk about how that benefited you in the moment. And let's talk about how maybe if you don't do that again, how that's going to benefit you in the long run. See, we want to do therapy. We want to do therapy jargon with adults, but we don't do it enough with children. And Laconia, you can co-sign with me on this. You imagine all the coping skills that we teach adults. Now,
Right.
imagine if we got a hold of them when they were 5 or 6 years old going to kindergarten. You want to see
Right.
structure, routine, and consistency. You want to see functional behavior. Go to a primary school and go to a kindergarten class. By day 5, these kids can tell you when they eat lunch. They can tell you where every toy goes back to. They can tell you their schedule. They can tell you what teacher said what. They can tell you who in their classroom had on a blue shirt. You know why? Because at that age, their brains are at that biggest sponge capacity where they can get all this stuff. And as long as you reinforcing it, now you're raising functional children who gonna turn into functional adults.
Yeah.
That's my mission at
Yeah.
my house. I ain't too much concerned with all the, if my daughter not jumping around, lollygagging and being silly, I'm gonna think something wrong with her. That don't irritate me. But when she not managing her emotions correctly, or when she hauls off, and you have to meet my daughter to know that these are things that she doesn't do. But when I know she explodes on another kid, or she gets angry at school, then I know something's going on. Instead of reprehending her for something that she's learning to deal with, and instead of shaming her for doing what she did, let's talk about cost and benefits of your behavior. Because see, we'll do it to an adult when they're in therapy. Why are we not doing it to kids at the house?
Yeah.
Well, you
Because
do what you know. You
Because
do
it's
what you
about
know.
control.
of course,
I beg.
yeah, we do what we know. We do what we know. But even me
Right.
having to go to a parenting class and having to sit through like a
Thank
training
you.
and really
Are you
listen
okay? Because it seems like you're
to.
really bothered by what I said. Are you all right?
Oh, I said earlier that it kind of set me the wrong way, but I'm normally animated. I don't know if you watch the show, but I'm animated. I do this
I
all the
don't.
time. So,
But
okay,
I
well then,
do go
yeah.
by body
Go ahead,
language.
Michelle. Continue.
I did want to say, I
So
think sometimes we're at extremes. I personally, I
yeah,
think you spare the rod, you spoil the child. I personally don't think that you should be whooping your kid often, not even sometimes. I think every blue moon, if you have to, that's something that may happen. My mama whooped me, and I think I turned out pretty okay. The point is not that is the go-to. And some people may never have to do it. If that's your parenting, you may never have to do that. But I think acting like you whoop your child is like abuse. To me, I don't agree with that. I think that it should be the last resort. I think there are tons of other things that you should do. I'm not saying I don't think you should have to get rid of it, because here's the thing: even a small little, let's say a 6-month-old baby goes to touch something.
You
There's
move their
nothing
hand
wrong
out the
with
way. You don't slap their
taking.
hand. You move it back. They teach you slap it back. Don't slap their hand down. Move it back away from the stove. You don't have to slap them. Remove the object. Remove
But
their
but
hand.
I
There's
don't
so many
know. But
ways.
does the tap? I think the tap would signify to them, don't do that again. If you
You
just
can
move
just move
it, I'm
your
not
hand.
I'm not sure if that is teaching them a lesson that you can't do that. I'm not sure. But what I'm saying, everybody is different. I am not pro whoop your kids. Okay. I'm just not on that extreme either. I think that the problem is when people think that raising their kids is yelling at them, whooping them, reacting all the time. That's the problem. Like, because you can whoop your kid every weekend and they are still going to behave in a certain way and be a certain way if you're not teaching them things and if you're not being an example for them. I see this every single day. And I have parents who will come to me, and honestly, like, I get the frustration, like I can't stand it, and I'm ready to go in on the parents, but then they're talking to me, and as a teacher I have to be a little more understanding to the parent too, because some of them really don't know. Some of them really don't know. And it's up to us to teach them. These parents, I whoop them every day. I don't know. They literally don't know what to do. And I hate the behavior. I'm like, you whooping them ain't gonna do nothing. It's never worked. It hasn't worked since he was in kindergarten. He's in 5th grade now. It's not gonna work. So it frustrates me. It makes me want to say, man, mom, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, not just whoop them. So I agree. Like, there are other things that need to be in place. You got to teach them, and more than anything, you got to be an example. You got to pass on certain values and morals, and you got to reinforce them. You got to praise them for when they do well. You got to acknowledge that.
And you gotta praise them when they ain't doing well either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
a hard head, a hard ass make a soft man.
Yeah, but
you gotta praise them when they ain't doing well either. You do. You gotta praise them when they ain't doing well.
What example? What an example?
An example. Okay. So my daughter, because she thinks that because I have to sometimes go back to when I was 9, 10 years old and how a 9 and 10-year-old would think. And the YouTube and the screen time, that's probably the biggest issue at my house. Because there's certain things I just will not let her subscribe to. Period. And I've explained it to her. And then when I explain something one time, I always end it with this. Now you have an explanation. I'm not explaining it again. My no is right.
Thank you.
And I don't have to explain it to you anymore. That's reinforcing them, teaching them early how to set boundaries. So in everything I'm doing and reinforcing, I'm teaching her how to do it as she gets older. But anywho, to answer your question, Ms. TJ, I had an issue with screen time. And she did something. She went to a site on YouTube that this anime, whatever site that I just don't like, period. She went to it again because I saw it in the search history. Because I'm that mama. I start taking devices. I start going through TVs. She ain't home right now. I've been in her room twice today.
Oh, Lord.
What's she reading? Or to straighten up or whatever. But I'll tell her I'm going in your room. She knows I go in there. I look under the bed, because in my house, we ain't got nothing to hide. We a loving family. We ain't hiding nothing. Okay. So that's just what it is. Because I don't want her to have what I had, where she can't come talk to me. Because I lived in a house where I couldn't talk to the woman. I want my daughter to be able to talk to me. And I know she's going to have her moments, but I want to make her comfortable to say, hey, you can come talk to us. That's why I believe in the whole old school mantra of, because the other problem is, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I got to say this. What happened to everybody sitting at the table eating together and having a conversation? Because that's what we do at my house. Ain't no screen time during dinner time.
Technology.
Yeah.
That's what
we ain't doing that. We got a basket at the table. You gonna put if you like if Cannon came to my house to eat dinner and they dinner guests and they gonna see it. Yeah, we're gonna need you to get off your phone because we're having dinner. Because that's what we do. Structure, routine, and consistency. Anywho, she got in trouble about the screen time. Long story short, all my TVs, especially in her room, they can easily be snatched off the wall. So, me, I can't trust you with the phone. I can't trust you with the TV now. So it's coming off the wall. So
you need
I
to
go
find
in there
that
do my
burner
routine.
phone she got, Miss Jovo.
Hey,
Like
I'm just saying. So I took the TV off. She was devastated, and I said, I love the way that you're handling your emotions right now. I love the way that you're understanding that this was a consequence told to you prior to you committing what you demonstrate this behavior. You're handling yourself well. This is not gonna last forever though, and you get to earn this back. And you know what I got after that? I got an apology after that. And my daughter will tell you, she will say it. I don't like to let my parents down. When they teach me something and I do the opposite of what they teach me, I don't like to let my parents down. And see, that's and in raising a daughter, and Darwin and Rashad, I don't know if you have kids, Darwin, I know you do, but let me tell you something. That look that your daughter give you when you praise her as her father, when she's doing what she's supposed to do, that look is like $1 million check. I see it every day. See, we got
That's
to
the
start
best thing.
observing those small things.
That's the
Yes.
best thing about being a parent. And the
Right.
kids, they will let you know when you've done a
Mhm.
great job, and they will let you know when you've done a bad job. And as a
Right.
parent, we have to know when we do a bad job, we need to apologize to these kids. We need to suck it up and say, "I'm sorry." I'm explaining to them why you was wrong, because they need to know this. They need to feel like they're protected. They need to know that their feelings matter.
Right.
You know, and it's just not about being no dictator and telling them when they're wrong. No, tell them when you're wrong too. Yeah, I messed up, baby. I'm sorry. You know, it's
Yeah.
because like you said, that look, you know, it can make you cry and it can make you laugh. You know, so you know, both my daughters, my son's too much. He's still
Got
trying to
him
be that
wrapped around they
disguiser.
finger.
But my daughters, oh my God, them looks. I mean, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And I know
I
I said
agree.
a lot, but I got a lot of passion about this because I guess because I've kind of been in Raven shoes, and I guess because I've also worked in the penitentiary before, and I've worked in juvenile hall, and I can tell you the formula
Oh, okay.
for
Y'all
All
messing
the
a kid
understand.
time,
up.
them kids be the main ones getting beat.
You be going in her room like you doing a shakedown, don't you?
Well, I mean,
Oh,
I
oh
understand that, and I don't have any qualms about it. I mean, I
Yeah.
worked in alternative school with gang bangers. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
get it. I was raised in a home.
Right.
My my grandfather was born in 1910. You know, so I get all of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I I still
Mm-hmm.
stand by that it worked for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That when I say my daughter was afraid of me,
Mm-hmm.
she was afraid of me. Now I knew I wasn't going to do anything, but she didn't, and I was okay with that. And I still stand by it.
what do you
And what
think
I
fear
have,
does to a body?
Mm-hmm.
like I said,
Oh, okay. Just checking. I was
like
just
I
wondering, like,
said,
what fear does to
yeah,
people, but never mind.
like I said, and I raised a well-adjusted, not to say a perfect, because I made my mistakes and I've admitted those. I've admitted those.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a child that graduated 86 out of 600, never was in trouble, went on to get graduate from college, married, had a new baby. So I did okay. Now there are things, a lot of things that
Mm-hmm.
I experienced that she did not. But there are some things that she did because I did what I knew,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't do everything that I
Mm-hmm.
knew. So again, judge me. I really don't
Mm-hmm.
care, but I appreciate your input. I appreciate your insight. And again, the things that I did wrong as well as the things I did well, she has learned from it and she will not continue those. Because we've already talked about with my granddaughter, there's some things that I did that she's not going to do. Just like with some things that my mother did with me, I didn't do with her.
Mhm.
So, you know, my
Mm-hmm.
mother didn't talk to me at
Mm-hmm.
all, but I did talk to my daughter and she could talk to me. My mother didn't talk to me about sex.
Mm-hmm.
None of that. I talked to my daughter about all of that. So again, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Judge, I do what you need to do. I appreciate your passion and and I respect it.
Yeah, and you know,
But
I'm
I raised my daughter the best way that I could in the best way I knew how.
yeah, and you know,
And
not to
you do
speak
the
for everyone,
same.
but I would say this isn't. You know, none of us are judging one another. We're just having a dialogue, having these conversations, sharing our experiences, and learning from one another. So I don't think there's any judgment
Well,
from
I
anyone.
think there really was judgment, and that's okay. That's okay. There was clearly judgment because judgment is an assessment. That's what
Yeah.
judging is. It's assessing. Now condemnation is something different.
But like you said, doing your
Agreed.
generation, y'all did things differently, and to your point, y'all did what y'all knew to do, and every generation does what they know to do, and it's just going to get and over time we all see what's working. We all see things that's getting better, and we all see things that's getting worse. And I think it's getting better to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying? Kids are learning that they do have a voice. They're learning how to talk more. I think the violent crimes has gone down. So I think whatever you did to get your child to where she's at, graduated, she's healthy, she's happy. Hey, that's all you can ask for. Everybody does it a different way. I don't believe in whoopings, but I do believe certain kids, it does work for certain kids. I do believe that, and I'm not saying beatings or like extension cords and stuff like that
No,
they was doing back in the
no.
day. But spankings, I do think to a certain extent it does work for some kids. You know what I'm saying? And but because you're proof it worked. I mean, if you and your daughter have a happy, healthy relationship, she understood what you did to get her to the point that she's at. She's happy doing what she's doing. Obviously, it worked. So I mean, that's just what it is. But
Yeah, I'm just gonna add, like I said at the beginning, if you ain't gonna do nothing else, you're gonna jack them up a little bit, trying to get through it. You know what I mean? That's just our parents jacked us up a little bit. They gonna jack their kids up a little bit. That's just what it is, because there is no one size fits all. There's no manual. There's no. I mean, of course, there is some things that, of course, are going to be detrimental that you just know for a fact, right?
Right.
But other things, like the little nuanced things, you just don't know, because even children are different. You know what I mean? Like, I had to learn it. Like, I have a 19-year-old son, and I have a 4-year-old daughter.
What?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. And my 19-year-old son is nothing like how my daughter is, right? They're totally different people, totally different types of personalities, totally different things. So you have to try to figure out, and a lot of times it's trial and error. You know what I mean? So you just like, you just trying your best to figure it out. But I feel like as long as we as parents are adaptable, you know what I'm saying, make adjustments, pay attention, then that's like really the best you can do, because you can't do nothing else outside of that. But I'll just leave it there, So.
And on that, I've been coughing and I am going to bed. I'm very tired, and I apologize if I offended anyone. I can get a little bit overzealous.
Now we're talking about the kids, That's
conversation. We
Yeah.
get passionate about certain things.
Oh yeah, and again, it's funny. Again, and on my show with my daughter, I've admitted to many mistakes and I've cried and apologized, and because you never intend to scar your child, but doesn't mean you don't.
Yeah, you're going to, regardless,
it doesn't mean
no
you
matter
don't.
what. You gonna do something.
Yeah, but I'm.
But these conversations are important.
Huh?
Yeah. She said these discussions are important.
Oh yeah, and again, if all the things I did bad, I know that I did something good, because she's proof of that. So I'm all right. All right, y'all have a good evening.
All right, thank you so much. Today. We're actually all going to go ahead and close out. Is there anybody who, I would normally take calls, but it's so late. We went over like our target time. But I really appreciate this call or these conversations that we had tonight. Is there anyone who wants to close out? No, we haven't heard much from LaTanya in a minute, or Rashad. So did one of you want to chime in and say any last minute thoughts?
What I was thinking has already been said. As far as the parenting, my thing was the difference I've noticed is the freedom of voice and choice that children have now. And back in the day, there didn't seem to be much of that. There was more structure. There was more, you do as I say. There was no questioning. And I think that everything, as somebody said earlier, everything in moderation, everything in balance. And I think that there's value in both of those things. Like you all said, children are different, so that's why I didn't speak up, because everything was being said that I agreed with. Every child is different, but there are manuals, there are books. And like Javonda said, like go to a parenting class. There are things that you can do to learn and to do better, to do different than what you were taught, because everything we were taught was not necessarily the best thing.
Right.
So just be ever learning, be flexible. I heard somebody say, be adaptable, and I think that's important.
Rashad, did you want to add something?
No, everything was said.
Okay. I did want to add something. I think that, back in the day, like LaKanya was saying, the kids didn't have much of a voice. It was just do what I say do. And not only that, there was parents didn't feel like they needed to give an explanation of certain things. Now, I get the sentiment, as a teacher, I don't want to have to explain everything, right? But like I do explain most things, because here's the thing, like, and I think our societies would be better if parents did explain things, because what happened is you teach children, I think in older generations, kids learned rules. They just learned, oh, don't do this, don't do that. But they didn't know why, and that's why you have a whole lot of people now who have neglected some things maybe they shouldn't have neglected, but they never knew why. They never knew why this was important.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that old adage of, well, don't ask me why, or because I said so, is something that needed to change, and that doesn't mean you got to explain everything. Like my students in my classroom, they know why we have certain procedures. They know why I have certain expectations, and certain rules. They will be able to verbalize it to you. But is there ever a time, like I can count a couple times where they were like, well, why this, Miss Patterson? And I'm like, because I said so. Like I've said that a couple times, not very often, but only because I've laid a foundation of expectations and values in the classroom. So it's like, really, they asking me, but if they sat and thought about it, they already know. They already know why they can't do what they trying to do. If they really sat and thought about what they're doing, because of all the other teaching that I've done and the examples and the role playing and, the reinforcements, the talking, all these things that we've done so far up until this point, they pretty much know, oh, it's not a good idea for me to do this. That don't mean they ain't gonna ask you though, So there are times when I'm like, do this because I said so, right? Whatever it may be. But I think generally speaking, we do have to communicate not just rules, but values and morals and principles to our kids. Those are the things that will go from generation to generation. So if in just in answering the question, y'all just so silly. I'm reading the comments, but just in answering the question, what needed to change, that was one thing that I think needs to change. Not that we lose our authority or anything, but we do have to not just teach a set of rules. I think about this in terms of the church, not just the church. This is just one example, but a lot of times, go to church. That's what people heard all the time. Go to church. Go to church. Every Sunday you gotta do this. You gotta do that. And so now we have a whole generation of people who are like, well, why I gotta do that? They never understood why. They don't understand why, so they find no value in it. Saying just in general, like our generations were good at teaching God, teaching religion, but not really the principles behind it, whether you agree or not, it's
Right.
just they didn't pass the substance on. They passed on just kind of general rules of regulations, and kids don't like, people don't like to be regulated, they don't like to be controlled forever. So when they get older, they do what they want to do. I never understood why he's so silly. I never understood why, I'm just speaking as somebody else. Oh, I never understood why, I couldn't be out late at night. So, now I'm out late. This is just an example. People just, don't have to follow that rule, so now I'm not gonna follow the rule. You know what I mean? So it's like we have to break that not talking to our kids and not explaining things to our kids. I think that's one thing that, we definitely have to stop from older generations, among many other things. And you all touched on a lot of them. I feel like this could be like a whole other conversation. Yeah.
I just know one thing: don't send your kid to Raven School with no scar on their knee or something. You're going straight to jail. I know that.
Raven School.
You don't send them to class. Don't send them to class with no bruise. They fall and hurt themselves at the park. You better not send them to school next day. And see, where you get that from? Oh, your mom over there?
That's not what I said.
No, I
was for my kids.
Serious
Like,
about that one.
Also,
Oh Lord.
I think like I feel
Oh
the way
Lord.
like I'm not. I get Raven. I think that should be the last resort. Like I say, I'm not anti-whooping, but if I ever had a kid, I probably would. If my kid is like me, not to my own horn, but if my kid was like me, I probably would never have whooped my kid anyway. And or even if I just had, like, I if I ever did have a child, I would probably be able to count on one hand the number of times I was spanked, if I ever had to. But I think because I was raised getting whoopings, and not often, but because I was raised getting whoopings, I'm not like anti-whooping, because my mom, that wasn't her only resort. Like that's not how she tried to raise me, through whooping. And even when she whooped me, I hated it, but I knew she wasn't like hateful. Like I still saw her as a loving mom because of all of everything else she was to me. I think, unfortunately, a lot of kids have such horrible experiences. They get all the hard love, right? The so-called love, right? The whooping, the screaming, the yelling. The first, I'm going to whoop you for everything you do. And I'm not just going to whoop you. I'm going to darn near tear your head off. Like, they get that, and they get the destructive comments, and they don't get the parenting. All they get is the whooping. And so they grow up
without the respect.
No, I'm gonna have to agree with Misunderstanding and Miss Jovo. And my mother is watching right now, so I'm probably gonna get in trouble, and I might get a whooping after this. My mother didn't whoop us a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got jacked up for big things. You know what I mean? Like the most ridiculous things. But I will say that I do think your children being afraid of disappointing you goes way further than them being afraid of you. Exactly. And I say that because like I was afraid to get a whooping from my mother, but I was still doing stuff. Like I had no qualms about like whatever. And then like I just got the whooping, and it was like, it was like almost like a game. Like you said, like I'm about to run around the couch. You have to catch me for this one, right?
Right, let me take this whooping and get on my
right. But my grandmother never hit me ever. But I did not want to disappoint her. Like when she used to tell me, like, I'm so disappointed in you, I used to be like that used to be like the end of the world. Like, what you mean you disappointed in me? Like, no, grandma, don't do it. But just so I have to agree. It's like you have to figure out a way to kind of like foster that type of thing, because outside, like them kids, they no limit soldiers. They gonna take it, and they go.
They shouldn't have to. That's my thing. Children shouldn't have to get accustomed to getting, beat. Like, why we gotta put hands on them? We already dealing with slavery effects. You gonna start it out already? 4, 5, 6, 1. Whenever I have visit grandparents, the first ones to say, "Well, you need to be beating these kids." What do they do to get beat? All this crying. 2-year-olds cry. What? Well, when I was raising kids, I beat them every day. Look how they turned out. That's why they don't talk to you.
Oh wow!
That's why you don't see your grandkids all the time. I mean, come on now, be real. You beat them every day.
And then when people say, "Oh, well, I got beat every day and I turned out okay," I want my daughter to be more than okay. We ain't tired of black kids being just okay.
Black children, only
like seriously,
we can't never flourish.
And I know some of my family might be watching. And I'm just like, I don't care. Like, y'all know how I feel about it. I've been vocal about it. It is what it is. Okay. You know, people, and then when you start doing something new, you know, in our community, we want to always, oh, they think their kid's special. Yeah, I think my child's special. What is okay? Why can't black kids be special? Why can't black
They
kids
start
be
off saying,
exceptional? Why
until they
can't we
call
be
them
creative?
or have extra help.
I don't
Yeah.
never recall getting a whooping for
Right.
something bad that I did.
Wow.
I got whoopings for like laughing too much.
Exactly. It's not
You know,
discipline.
I never like
Yeah, that
I
kind
got
of
suspended
stuff.
from school. I didn't get a whooping.
Oh
But
wow.
when I was
I
doing
like
all
it.
that,
Right.
I was laughing too much. So stop with all that goddamn laughing. What you laughing for? Go to sleep. You know, come and get a whooping.
Oh
Like,
wow.
I was getting whoopings and stuff like that.
It's more out
You
of
know.
frustration. It's not necessarily to discipline the child. It's because you frustrated about life. Look who's
Mhm.
here for you to beat up. Ta-da.
Yeah.
I wish you was there for me, Raven.
So.
I ain't got nothing to do with that.
Raven said, "Why'd you
Okay.
hit him? Why'd you hit
All right,
him?
y'all.
Huh?
No,
Why'd you
for
do
real,
it?"
it's something that touches me. I'll go
Yeah.
to bed with the parents about the kids because you knew that you didn't have to hit them. Yeah, but I want to go to sleep in the morning.
So why did you do it?
That's abuse.
Right.
You abuse
Right.
them so they can cry himself to sleep so that you can get sleep from work. Okay, let's take a step back and think about why we had kids. What are we doing here, Dad? Like, what? Let's really, come on now. I know we all turned out okay,
Right.
but come on, for real. We got to do better. The goal is to be better. That's why I tell parents it's going to be sunshine and happiness over here. We got light jazz playing. No sadness. Everybody's going to be happy all the time. You know, that's the goal. But,
Right.
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 Lord.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. It's been a good one, y'all. I really appreciate y'all. Good folks, good conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to my girl Laconia from VSU, not Virginia State, but Valdosta State University, baby, home of the Blazers. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to give her a shout out. Just appreciate that. Appreciate that. We're actually, me and her actually are mourning the loss of a very great student. I wanted to give a shout out to my friend who passed, Laverne. She passed away this week. I just want to tell all my classmates, we sticking together through this. Thank y'all for watching the show. Stay encouraged. We're gonna get through this one.
All right. Thank you so much. You are so right. We will. We Black. We've been through so much more, right? And yeah, and I'll be praying for you all, Jovo. I'm sorry, I meant that comment for all of us, but
Thank you.
I'll be praying for you all and the one that you've lost. But I thank everybody, Rashad, Darwin, and the usual crew or the squad, Cannon, Mrs. Understanding, Miss Jovo. Until next time. All right, y'all have a good night.
Later.